Earth Debate, Uncut, and After Show. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKiernan, Phoenix Rising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Fibre Oats, Michael Kahn, Rob H, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Troy Shuker, Harry Blade, Mobile Mac 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Nealands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Bending of space-time is something to do with the eclipse. And this girl and the guy, the Flat Earth crew, was just ripped into him with the scientific method, and he was stuttering and stammering, and he didn't have a chance. And that was Mac Toon. If I can find the link, I'll send it you, Moop.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Morning.
Morning, Nathan.
Hey, Nathan. Morning, Nathan.
Hey, Eli.
Good morning, good morning.
Morning. Hey, Neil.
Hello?
Good morning, Neil.
What's up, Eli?
What's going on, buddy?
Freaking raining today. Sucks.
Yeah, that slowed me down. What's up, buddy?
You
That's
do
what
everything
slowed me
on
down.
bike?
I'd have been going. Yeah,
Motorized or pedal?
motorized scooter.
Yo, I see people doing that 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning on like regular motorized scooters, doing DoorDash, Uber. I said, wow, everybody hustling.
Yeah, man, it's good money. No reason to be hungry out here.
Hey, Eli.
Agreed.
Hey, what's up, Ted?
You don't look 12% black.
What? Eli's black?
He said he was 12% black. Look at him now.
Don't be silly. Eli's not black.
I've gotten injections, guys. Congratulate me. My surgeon is amazing.
Wow.
The science of dermatology.
Dermatology.
You know, I could invent something like that, and I could say, I'm the first white man to ever turn black. It's a presupposition, but who really cares?
Excuse me. I think I've already done that.
Rachel Dolezal beat you both.
Hey, I'd like to comment on yesterday's show when we were talking about the sextant and how it works, and Rakia and SC were here.
Excellent show.
Yeah, it was. It's the proof of the argument is the angle itself. And I think that some people are just looking for more than that. when that's all there is. You don't need to go to the rest of celestial navigation. You could, if you want to understand it, like I want to, and buy a sextant like I did, all the stuff that you've seen me show, but you don't have to. All you got to understand is that it's an angle, and it's clarified. It's a right angle because you got a minus from 90. The minute that you hear those words, that means that measurement has a flat baseline. And it's over right then and there. Don't have to go anywhere else unless you don't understand what a right angle and a 90 is.
That's what I don't understand. Why it's what you just said is so like understandable, if that's even a word. I don't understand what they're not getting.
It went into, well, how did the stars work? And like, it doesn't matter. It's an angle measurement. What kind of angle is it? Right angle, 90. So it's like, oh, is it that simple? It is. It's that simple.
Eli read something yesterday. What did you read, Eli, yesterday?
Yeah, I was just about to get to that.
Go ahead.
The definition, the way they define elevation angle, right? When you go to the definition of elevation angle, it's very clear. I didn't find what I found yesterday. I don't know what I'm typing in differently, but this says basically the same thing followed by a host of images, and it's like you kind of can't. There's nothing you can do to kind of like wiggle your way around these images being these images. Sort of like when you type in refraction and you hit images and you're like, oh, this doesn't depict anything that this guy has been talking about for the last 10 minutes or whatever. Anyway, so the elevation angle, used interchangeably with altitude angle, is the angular height of the sun in the sky measured from the horizontal. Confusingly, both altitude and elevation are also used to describe the height in meters above sea level. And then you see all of these images, and they give you two lines meeting at a vertex. So you are at that vertex point, and then there's the line going out to the object in the sky and the line going out horizontally. And that's it. I mean, it's crazy that they make super simple conversations super difficult simply because they don't want to admit that it is what it is.
Your citation was PV Education. I've got one from Sustainable by Design, right? Quote, the altitude angle, open brackets, sometimes referred to as, quote, solar elevation angle, end quote, close brackets, describes how high the sun appears in the sky. The angle is measured between an imaginary line between the observer and the sun and the horizontal plane the observer is standing on, end quote.
That's it.
That? Where is that?
That is over.
Sustainable by Design, altitude angle.
It's sort of like, I don't want to make the
I've got
comparison.
eight
You cannot have altitude, isn't it? The
I've got 10
students to have
altogether.
depression, not altitude.
I got 10 citations. They all say the same thing, and one of them's the one that about to call you chocolate that Eli's already read out.
Well,
this one's from Merriam-Webster. The angle formed by the line of sight and the horizontal plane for an object above the horizontal. So it's it's all there, isn't it? Like you say, horizontal plane. It's a flat level surface.
Right.
What they've been trying to do, though, is say that horizontal plane has nothing to do with the surface, which is moronic.
Well, that's correct. That's a correct statement from a globe believer or anti-flat earther. That horizontal baseline, the plane you are standing on, by definition, has nothing to do with the globe surface.
That's what somebody said. They're talking about what you're standing on.
Yeah, they define it as what you're standing on, but when a response comes from an anti-flat earther that's got nothing to do with the ground, no, it's the ground you're standing on. It's just got nothing to do with your globe ground that's curving away from you, leaving a void ahead of you that isn't there.
Yep.
Yeah, that contradicts the celestial sphere model, the idea that the ground is dropping away at 8 inches per mile squared.
Right on.
Somebody wanted to say something in Discord that I want to make a little comparison.
I heard one deck, but you were rumpusing him, so...
No, I think I'd already spoke, Nathan. I'll just give the definition of that angle. I'm fine now, thanks.
When you guys are saying like it's so easy that they're trying to make it difficult and they're looking for something else, I kind of compare it to, and then we could take it off. We don't got to get into it, but it's sort of like salvation, how it's described in the Bible. God made it so easy. Just accept Jesus Christ and you will be saved. And there's other things that go with it after you accept him, but he made it very easy. That's what this is. It's like so easy. It's right there, horizontal. What else do you need to know?
Nathan, I got 3 slides on the topic. I see that there's another one there. Put that one up.
Okay.
Yeah, Eli put the other one up.
Starting with figure 5.
Yeah, I mean, there's your equatorial plane. There's your, again, that's another part. When they say they're taking measurements, all the measurements in the almanac are based on the center where the Earth's cut in half. And it's an equatorial plane, a disk, a flat disk, as you see here in figure 5. So if you put a little curvature of a protractor over this, or a dome, then you got a protractor, and the base of the protractor sits on this figure 5. And there they show the sun and the hypotenuse and the baseline. Everything is right there. It's a right angle. And the trick is so easy to uncover because the word angle can only mean one thing when it's a right angle and you minus from 90, which is redundant. So it's like, well, how do you do that from a curved surface? You don't. You have to do it from the center of the Earth. Even in their own books, it has to happen from the center of the Earth. Well, what's the center of the Earth? Does it have a curve? No, it's this disk, this cutout, this equatorial plane. And so if you go to the next slide, figure 4, solar altitude angle or elevation angle, again, it's showing you a partial disk there at the base. And even the azimuth angle, which is north in the clockwise motion for the direction of the sun in this case. So you can see north to where the arrow saying east, that would be 90. And then from east to, say, where the dotted line where the sun is, we'll call that south. So that would be 180. It's a 180 of a 360 circle, two-dimensional, not a sphere. And how do you get an azimuth angle? Well, it's a horizontal angle. It's not a curved angle, as seen here. And the last one, figure 3, here's a zenith angle. You can see the zenith of the observer. You can see the sun over here. All you got to do is put a dotted line perpendicular to the Earth horizontal plane, and you would have the sun's GP right where it's over at. And I mean, again, I don't understand why they are just the word angle measurement and then being defined as a right angle. We don't have to know anything else about celestial navigation because it starts and stops right there. A sextant is an angle measuring device.
Very good.
I think some of them is they're struggling or they're denying it because Sorry, just turn that down a bit. I think because they can't actually see a physical triangle or angle like you would drawn in a book or on a screen, they just can't. They're not accepting it because you're doing it from a line of sight and you're using the horizontal as your flat baseline. Because they're not seeing it as a drawing or something on a computer program, they just can't. They won't accept it because they can't see it. Although we know what it's doing, it's using the horizontal horizon, and we're creating an elevation angle, so it must be flat and level. But they just can't accept it for some reason.
That's fine. They don't have to accept it. It's how it's done. So what, you don't accept how it's done? It's like saying, I don't accept that the car runs on petrol. Well, it does. Well, I don't accept that. Okay, fair enough. Off you go, you complete crazy idiot.
I wish your car didn't run on petrol.
You'll never win an argument against delusion.
Freaking $5.99 a gallon. I'm getting killed here.
You're so true when you say you'll never win an argument against delusion. I spent 2 hours of my time last night talking with people anti-flat earthers on another Discord server, and they were unable to do basic things like define gravity or define gravitational atmospheric pressure or define weight. Yet they were happy to tell me all about these things, but when asked for definition for these words, it was just vacant. And eventually, when we got some definitions and we started to apply them, I didn't understand. So you are absolutely correct. You will never win an argument with somebody that is delusional.
Well, arguments are meant for reasonable people, not delusional ones.
There's no point talking to anti-flat earthers. You've got to appreciate Nathan's work because he spends a lot of time talking to these idiots. And it is futile. There is no point talking to these anti-flat earthers. Literally none.
I don't know if I completely agree. It's a useful teaching tool to have them oppose you in the way they do oppose you, as opposed to Arwen doing it.
See, when you do it when you view it from that perspective, they are useful idiots. But is that useful idiot actually useful? It's like a double negative, and you're taking a positive from it. And ordinarily, I'd agree with that, but it's still a useful idiot being an idiot.
Yeah, but they behave how they behave, and they are exampled by the people who come here. And yes, in the moment, it seems like a complete waste of time when you're going over the same thing for 2 hours. But if I can take 10 minutes out of that that's useful, then that's worthwhile to me.
But now, if it was just you and him speaking, right, and there wasn't an audience to glean information from that debate, it would be useless.
Correct.
Yeah, so like when Einstein says about the gravitational field, he describes how the Earth creates its own gravitational field. We would call that the medium. He does himself call it the medium. When I point out to somebody like Jeremy, for example, that the gravitational medium or field is what causes the acceleration, it's not the woo-woo force attracted to the center of Earth, as per the Cavendish claim. It is the medium, as per current science. If you then spend 40 minutes arguing whether it's the medium, the field, or whether it's gravity, it is futile because these people will not accept that the current science does not support them, and they will argue it till Billio that gravity is the gravitational field, when it isn't. It's the gravitational field, and gravity itself is not the field. But they've got to conflate that term, gravity, with the field, because they need gravity to cause acceleration. And we all know it doesn't because it isn't force. But it takes 40, 50, 60 minutes to get that point concluded. And eventually they conclude with, you just don't understand. Your weird abstract interpretation. And ultimately it's black and white. It's the medium that does it. They don't like it. They can't accept it. It takes an hour to get to there though. Useless.
What medium? You're
You
talking
don't
nonsense.
understand.
What medium?
This is the current position in science, isn't it? It's the medium that Einstein defined as the gravitational field.
Yeah, but that medium is defined by his geometry as pseudo force space, and the field you're describing is it bending. That's space-time bending. Well, when you say the medium causes it and they won't accept that, the medium described in mathematics that doesn't exist, they won't accept the description. So what?
You try telling them that and getting them to accept that, they just won't do it.
Hey, Anthony, be careful about saying sorry.
Like you said, I mean, I'm just agreeing with you. It's like arguing with nutters. So let me get it straight. You're saying that if you try and explain to somebody that their reified force that doesn't exist is actually, literally, a geometry known as pseudo-force space, and we don't have a fourth dimension, they won't accept that. Well, okay,
Correct.
fine, no worries.
Yeah, but the problem is when we have that PBS document that you were talking about yesterday, that article saying that denying science is, or the tenets of the position is in some circumstances, whatever it said it was, discriminatory or offensive or whatever. They don't think that applies to them. They think they can deny their science, and it's completely ignorant to them. They think that applies to us that try and insist that they apply it. They think it applies to us, and I'm like, guys, it's talking clearly about you that deny science.
It's a weird one because we're in a very strange little fringe here. So it doesn't apply to us, and there's going to be other examples. Don't get me wrong, but if we just take us in isolation compared to the generalised stereotype that is flat earthers. Right? We don't have to worry about it. And the flat earthers and anti-flat earthers might have to worry about it. But we don't. Us specifically. And a few others that, if you're one of them, don't worry about it. I'm not including you. I'm just making the example clear. So the people who understand what science actually is haven't got an issue. The people who don't, or go against the globe rhetoric exactly as they're suggesting they might do something about, that includes anti-flat earthers.
Yeah, it does, and they deny that. They think that the rejection of science is us because they think that we are pushing things like pseudoscience. Yet when we ask them to define the term pseudoscience, honest to God, I had it with Jeremy last night, and we spent at least an hour, arguing over what is science, what is not science, how you define these terms, and ultimately he started to say things like, in your stupid definition. And I'm like, I'm just typing in the word pseudoscience definition on Google and saying, oh, look, pseudoscience says that it's the failure to adhere to scientific method. And he thinks that he instantly tries to personally ascribe it to my definition. And I'm like, oh, so it reduces to absurd. But yeah, you're right. These people will not accept that they are the anti-science people. They think it's us, and we're demanding that they apply science, not pseudoscience. They think it is delusional.
Right, why do they think they've been labelled anti-flat earthers rather than globe believers? A globe believer would believe, as laid down in the rhetoric, that Earth's turning at 15 degrees underneath the gyro. That's the rhetoric. So if you're a globe believer, you believe that. If you come along and start telling us how planes fly backwards because in the inertial reference frame you'll watch a plane retain its angular momentum, then you're not going along with the Coriolis drift that's claimed by the globe. You're standing in contravention of their, let's call it, what they call it, quote-unquote, science. Because their science is 15 degrees an hour drift. I mean, the consequences of their quote-unquote science is that flight times should be reduced. But that's how it's got to be laid down if you're a globe believer. You believe Earth turns underneath stuff at 15 degrees an hour. It's called Coriolis effect. That's what you believe. That's your rhetoric. If you go against that in any way, shape or form, not point out a flaw with the consequences of that belief that you've got Coriolis drift at 15 degrees an hour as Earth turns underneath stuff, not attached. The consequence would be flights having their short and reduced times. Not that you can then go against the science and start telling us about how Earth and atmosphere move as one, because that isn't the case, and isn't the rhetoric, and is against science, their science, which is actually, as Anthony pointed out, pseudoscience.
You're both right, and I commented on this 2 weeks ago? We are, if you take the how can I put it? Let's say you step back and see the whole picture view. We are dealing in a corner of the internet with all these crazies that are in chat and try to come in the past and argue with us. Now they don't even show up. The system that's out there has got everyone believing that if you're a flat earther, you're another, as you say. But in reality, if they ever listen to a debate on our show, you realize who the another is. And so this insulation of how they've got the media, the internet, all the different resources that are out there against an effectual flat earther who just wants to talk and discuss, hey, if it's this, then the consequence is this, right? But we don't see that. Okay, those people are us, and we're labeled as the crazies. But when they come to the show, they realize who the crazies really are, are this group who comes to our show. But the group that needs to come to our show doesn't come to our show because of the roadblocks that are set up in their mind already. So to finish that off, I'm talking to people who are talking to people, and the responses of their friends and relatives are exactly that. You guys are crazy. You guys are nuts. That's not reality. But they're the ones who are believing the narrative and haven't tested it out. They come here, and this is where change happens, because we're on the, well, you called it point of the sphere, but then we're dealing with these crazies, and we got to keep doing it and break through that to get to the general public.
You know why? I'm going to tell you why. Because pseudoscience gives them space. The scientific method takes it away. They have to have their space. You just don't understand. The scientific method is too narrow. You need to advance. You need to have an imagination. That's what I was told when I went to Gem Pandas.
Well, that's highlighting the way the others argue. I'm more talking about stepping back, and where's the general public that we're trying to reach that isn't coming to our show, and that's because of the way we are labeled. But then if they did come, they see that the label really is on the anti-flat earthers, not us. We're the more reasonable.
Not if they have a dream of space, you won't. Most people have a dream of space because of the TV and everything that's being put in front of their face.
That's the point, Neil. That's exactly my point.
I think there might be some of them, maybe, that get to a point where they're presented with flat Earth and it sort of makes sense. But they probably, I don't know, they might be terrified of thinking, I can't believe the Earth's flat because I'll be labelled as an absolute maniac and nutter on all the bullshit I'll have to go through, like we all have here, probably. So they just can't accept it. They will not accept it and think, I can't say the Earth's flat. I'm just going to protect the globe because I'll be put in a mental institution if I say the Earth's flat. Because it is a bit of a rough journey for some people.
Wandek, bravo. The cost is too high to be real and honest because of the way they've spun everything. So you've nailed it right there. So yeah, the average general public will see the arguments are strong and agree with us in private. But will they go out there and talk like we do? No, because of what's out there and the way it's reflected in society. We're the nutters according to society. So they're not going to go when the cost is too high.
Actually, I think it's gotten to the point now where we can describe the anti-flat earthers as the nutters.
No, they are the nutters.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it did strike me a couple of years back that we were being separated out. And while it seemed at the time like moan, they're being propped up and taking all of our search results and all the rest of the stuff that happened when YouTube addressed Congress. But we have still been separated. You know, there's very, very much a clear line between us and anti-flat earthers. Now, in the same way that YouTube propped up, initially at least, you know, the Mark Sargents and the Patricia Steers and the Eric DeBays, while the subject was new, and then moved the goalposts over to anti-flat earth, that doesn't change that what they do to that group may change in the future. You know, while everyone was all for putting flat earth in their names because it would show you up in the search results much quicker, well, that is still true for anti-flat earthers, right? They've taken over those searches. But they're still segregated. They're still a particular subset of society. They're not at one with society, at large with society. They're fringe also. Just fringe that are being promoted. So who knows what lies in store for the anti-flat earthers? They do go against the globe science.
Well, yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. And the special circumstance part, I think, is an important part to look at in that Berkeley article, because you can't ascribe to a religion and then make up parts to that religion yourself. It's people working outside the authority that they've put themselves under. So yeah, they're the ones in trouble and they don't even realize it.
Exactly. We're not going against globe rhetoric. If you point out a flaw, an error, an inconsistency, something that is illogical, That's reasonable. For whatever reason, it doesn't make sense. Here's how. Now, you can either accept it or not, but saying or contemplating that it doesn't make sense and then making up a new excuse for why it would if it worked the way you've decided the religion will work, that's not in line with the religion. Now, I'm not part of that religion. Heliocentrism is long past as my religion. I didn't know I was part of it when I was, but I was. Now I'm not. So that's not my religion. And freedom of religion is definitely a thing. And people spend all day, every day, criticising other aspects of other people's religions, with total immunity to do so. And that's what I'll be doing, pointing out the flaws in the heliocentric religion, while potentially open to prosecution, maybe, in time. The anti-flat earthers are very much just going against it. They're just disagreeing with it, they're just making up new nonsense that isn't in line with the story. Well, that's a problem. Me, I've got a freedom to disagree with you and your religion for the reasons that are just and right and also illogical from the globe side of the position.
Well, this is a very important point. So we're not wasting our time in the sense, again, if you step back and view, is we are showing that the anti-flat earthers who dominate the pages of the internet by using the term, and who don't come here now, which is obviously a sign that we're winning, but are chance ganking only, that they're being defined as the ones who are against the globe rhetoric. And we are defending the globe rhetoric from misrepresentation. We're trying to say, no. If you believe in the globe, you must believe this. But we're not globe believers. We're just making sure that they don't go out there as a Yahoo, so to speak, and make up their own version of this rather than take the official. And if you take the official, then the globe dies in reality the proper way. These guys come here trying to be fodder or some kind of little battle just to take the news off of the actual death of the globe the way it is. These are the diehards. These are the ones that will keep dying when the leader's been caught and hung and the system is broken down. They'll still keep fighting for it.
Right, the guy trapped behind enemy lines, hunkered down, still thinking the war's going on when it's long over.
According to Ruhif, that thing from Berkeley was a meme. But I haven't seen evidence now that what he's saying is true, because he could be telling a lie. But he said it was a meme. Now, I got sent it to me from someone who is not involved in any of this and is on Twitter. My best friend. He sent that to me. So I haven't seen evidence that it's a meme. And didn't you look on Berkeley yesterday and find some other information on the same subject?
Before you answer, it doesn't matter either way. It's a discussion point. So if it's real, as in Berkeley have produced that and published it, or it's a meme where someone is taking the piss, makes absolutely no difference. Because number one, what's it talking about? The idea of something. Well, we discussed the idea of something. Whether or not it's actually going to be put into effect by Berkeley or never be coming into effect because it's never come from Berkeley in the first place matters not in terms of it being a discussion point.
I've got that was the point I put to Ruthie, wasn't it? Cool. He says, yep, it's a meme, fake. Cool, thanks. Great discussion that meme generated then, is what I said. What were your thoughts on it?
Precisely.
We come back with, my thoughts are that you guys are as gullible as F. I responded with, that's a bit rude. And my retort is, this is the quality, you say. You're clearly not interested in having a substantive discussion. I've just given him an opener to say, what are your thoughts on that, which would have been a substantive discussion. So project away, Glenn, project away.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by a whole bunch of people today. We have got Sleeping Warrior, Arwin, Brian's Logic, 10th Man, Neil, Refracted Curvature, The Adam Meakin, Eli, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Let the harmony begin.
Peace and love, baby.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, everyone.
Feeling extra rumpusy today, Neil?
Good morning.
I'm feeling harmonized today.
Can we stop picking on Neil, please? It's not reasonable.
Sorry, Neil. Yes, no, I do agree. We did push Neil a little bit too far yesterday. It wasn't really funny anymore at some point.
Nah.
Justice for Neil.
Oh, thank you, Michael Kahn.
Not a chance.
Michael Kahn says, first, God bless Nathan and the panel. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Nice start to the show. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Maybe real hit has some.
It's in the maths, isn't it? That's where their evidence is. It's in the maths.
They have a straight line of sight to it.
What,
even
to the
though light is
geometric
bent.
horizon? I don't think so. Refraction.
If I don't reify it as the leading edge of a ball, I could be guilty of blasphemy and a hate crime.
You could.
Oh yeah, you definitely can't. You can't reify it as anything other than that. That's what their science is, isn't it?
We've only got one horizon, Anthony, and the horizon in there begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, formerly reified as the physical geometric leading edge of a sphere, was debunked by the Black Swan. If the Earth was a sphere, radius 3959 miles, then every distance to that horizon, that would be the geometric sphere edge, formerly known as Earth curve, would be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. And the distance to the horizon in the Black Swan image is beyond the geometric limitations of a sphere Earth radius 3959. Therefore, the horizon is not Earth curve, and the Earth is not a sphere.
Nobody claims that the horizon is Earth curve, Nathan.
Blasphemer!
Sorry, the horizon in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator is the horizon and is claimed to block boats and buildings. So while you might disclaim that nobody claims the horizon's Earth curve, it's in the maths labelled Earth curve maths.
Real hit claims that the horizon is not Earth curve. Real hit claims that what we see is the refractive horizon. The geometric horizon is the non-refractive horizon.
I see. So when he was claiming that boats, buildings, and the Isle of Man were physically being blocked by the physical limitation called Earth curve, labelled bulge, marked with an X as horizon in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculations he personally used, he's now saying that horizon that blocked the Isle of Man wasn't really blocking it, it's actually refracted? Oh, how interesting. I think not.
Yeah, a refracted bulge. Sorry.
No, carry on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in, Nathan. A refracted bulge. That's basically what he was claiming then back in 2016. There was a bulge, yeah? The bulge used to be in the Metamax, the Metabunk curve calculator. They used to have the bulge.
That's Earth curve.
And he was claiming that, yeah.
So are you saying
claiming refraction? Refracted bulge.
No, it was just the bulge in the maths that used to block the Isle of Man, though.
No, but he used to claim that this was blocking the other man and it was a geometric bulge. Now he's claiming that it's a refracted bulge, basically.
And which one does he use when he draws a straight line of sight to a tangent point in his maths currently there, Adam? Which one's that? Does he have a choice? Do we have more than one horizon?
If they're gonna, I'm sorry, Adam, go ahead.
No, I was saying, as far as I've seen, it's always geometric. He's drawing straight rays in Ruhif's work to geometric points. That was always the premise, because that's what he's going to do. He's going to show you how things are hidden in relation to that horizon, which is the leading edge. So much will be hidden because it is the leading edge ball. That's his claim. It's always been his claim.
Not according to what's on screen now.
Relevant to the distance.
Not according to what's on screen now.
No, but he's always on his own way. Kind of Rufy's religion, wasn't it? Because it's what's required.
Oh, I see. Oh, he might get in legal
Earth.
trouble then soon.
If they're going to battle this and call it the Battle of the Bulge, they're going to violate the general patent that's out there.
Meanwhile, as stated, we only have one horizon, as depicted in this diagram on screen now. Line OH is a bent line to a horizon labelled H in this diagram. Of course, it contradicts itself in the text above, where it describes how they've drawn the line of sight to the apparent horizon with the straight line OG. So there's two things that are a bit of a problem there. One is that you've got a line of sight to G, and two, that it's an apparent horizon. So whilst justifying how the horizon we see at H, that's seeing it according to them with a bent line, has been derived from something that you also need a line of sight and must be apparent. Now this line, OG, we can't see. It isn't apparent and we don't have a line of sight to it. And that's why this diagram exists, to explain how and why we don't have a line of sight to this apparent, meaning you can see it, horizon at G that we very specifically do not see. So Ruhif himself is telling us that we do not see this apparent horizon and we do not have a line of sight to it because we can't see it. To draw a line to it. It doesn't alter that he has got a line of sight with a straight line in his diagrams, doesn't he now, Adam?
You know, before you go, Adam, I would like to point out that the Earth curve calculator is the only positive claim that does not presuppose a flat plane, and it's been debunked. So now, presuppositionally, they have a flat plane, and that's
Correct.
it.
The begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator may have been modelled off elevation angle measurements to Polaris to derive dual radii, or dip angle measurements by Al-Biruni utilising a flat plane, but ultimately it stands alone as a presuppositional model based on R. Now, very early on we pointed out that R is just a presupposition. Now, we can show where you've got it and where you've assumed it mathematically from, but it doesn't alter that, as John's just pointed out, does stand alone until we debunk R. And then you have to look at where you've derived it from in terms of the model rearrangement.
I've got to challenge him. It's a model based on R. R is derived off a flat plane from Polaris, isn't it? So even...
Well, they have a
Hold
problem
on,
with
I think Adam
refract-
muted himself accidentally halfway through his sentence.
No, stop talking. I'm still thinking. But surely the simple fact that to derive the R, they're going to use a flat Earth elevation angle to Polaris to derive the unit to then put into this assumption.
Correct. So once you know the origins, I think that's John's point. Once you know the origins, even though the model does stand alone, so long as you don't appreciate that it has a presuppositional R value in it, once you do realise that the presuppositional R value in the standalone model has been derived from a flat plane, all bets are off. I was going to read out Jadu's super chat, but he retracted it before I could read it out. thank you very much for the super chat. I glanced over it, but didn't really read it. So thank you anyway. I'm sure what you had to say, which did reach the audience, required retraction.
Well, I'd like to comment I'd like to comment, if I may, just on what Adam just said. If the model is based on art, from elevation angle measurements to polaris, then refraction is only a flat Earth argument, not a global argument, because refraction, according to the subject matter expert Andrew Thomas Young, was from a flat plane, later changed with geometric considerations. So they take refraction from a flat plane and then they change it.
Just to go back to that super chat, Nate, I've got it here. It's really nice. I don't know why he's retracted it. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I mean, he's retracted it and he spent money to put it to us and then retracted, but it did reach the audience anyway, so I don't feel that guilty. Yes, please.
Thanks to all of you for an enjoyable drive to work each morning. Just remember, pilots are trained to account for Earth curve when their avionics fail.
Are or aren't? Or are not?
They just, I think sarcastically, just remember that pilots are trained to account for Earth curve when their avionics fail. They don't have to because it's dealing with it for them otherwise, apparently.
Right. But Earth curve for a pilot flying level is a cavity opening up ahead of their position. Well, if they head towards that, what's going to happen? Because it isn't there. There is no drop at 8 inches per mile squared. There's just a flat plane. So you've got a potential for somebody to think that the Earth's falling away at a vast rate, only to hit the ground. I think it was.
Well, what that guy's saying, I think, if he is a glober and he's not just being silly, is that when their avionics fail, they use the horizon to keep level flight.
Right.
Yeah, but that's just begging the question. There was many planes around before there was avionics. Did they account for Earth rotation and the cover of the Earth back in World War II?
Up with what Nathan was teasing our pilot with the other day, and his claim, wasn't it? He was claiming that his avionics accounted for Earth rotation. I think that's probably what he means.
That's not what he claimed.
Go on.
He claimed his avionics accounted for Coriolis drift. And Chocolate and Brian both pointed out, shouldn't your avionics account for Earth turning beneath your plane? Because that's something you might have to concern yourself with if it happened. However, he was specifically saying that the plane accounts for Coriolis drift, an effect only observable from a turning reference frame, not the plane. So he's an idiot. Coincidentally, the same level of idiocy as Wolfie6020, who fell into the exact same trap.
Recalling idiocy is fraught with error.
Oh, okay. I'll take it back if you can.
I keep hoping that Mr. Pilot will come and join us and tell us all about his instrumentation that accounts for illusions seen from the ground. I would love that. I mean, Mr. Pilot, if you're listening, come and share that with us, please.
But I've got to put my hand up then. Yeah, I got it wrong, didn't I? Why? I'll tell you why. Because it's so stupid what he said. My brain wouldn't let it. I've got to be accounting for something, but not for something that I don't need to account for. So apologies, yeah.
It's an admirable way of demonstrating
the arguments.
Go on, sorry, John.
I was going to say that's what's happened is the arguments from the anti-flat earthers have gotten so stupid that, like, even when we joke around about it, it could be one of their responses they come back with. They've fallen so far into delusion and ignorance.
But right, we played it on yesterday's show at the end of it, and it was on QE's Tuesday live show. But QE leading them down a path of getting them to declare that the plane flies backwards after it leaves the ground. Because that's the kind of anti-flat Earth nonsense that you need to adhere to when Earth's claimed to turn underneath an aeroplane. And that is precisely what it is claimed to do. Just doesn't have any manifest thing that you could observe, i.e. the flight time being shortened, which would be the natural consequence of Earth turning beneath aeroplanes, as is claimed to do. Now, if you know that it doesn't do that, and we point that out, you've got to do something. And what they do is lead you down a path of nonsense that is against the globe rhetoric and ends up with planes flying backwards. Or, worse still, if you're Simon Dan, telling us how the globe's claim of 2 reference frames is ruined.
Wait a second. Did the Adam Meekin just say that it was so stupid that he got it wrong?
No,
Yeah.
not exactly. He's saying that their double-speak contradiction is so ludicrous that in terms of cognition, he couldn't keep up with it to process the incorrect version they were asserting. He couldn't memorise that because it's ludicrous. So he's memorised the only natural consequence his brain can function to cope with, which is the consequence we point out doesn't happen. So for Adam's brain, it goes, he's got to be saying that he's accounting for Earth turn underneath, which also doesn't happen. No. He's actually saying he accounts for something you would only observe from the ground as you watch something in the air seeming to do something it isn't really doing. That's what he's saying he's accounting for, which is so off the wall crazy, but simultaneously fairly typical anti-flat Earth rhetoric, right?
Syntax error.
Oh, just bullshit overload, Neil, innit? I just couldn't cope with that much crap at one time.
Could I just point out that
derpity derp. Sorry, bro.
No worries, Chocolate, no worries. Could I just point out that Ruhif claims that we're all naive, yet that's exactly the claim that Ruhif makes.
Yeah, he's full of projection, is Ruhif. But another shout out to Jardu for another $20. Another super chat. I'm going to see if I can read this one before it gets deleted. Hi guys, sarcastic. Go at your pilot guy. Hold on. Hi guys, sarcastic. Go at your pilot guy. I have 10 thumbs. Accidentally retracted my post. I think I'm keeping up with this okay. When the avionics fails, the poor old flight engineer will be looking through the manual to see how to account for spin/curve. Right. No, they won't. Because they don't, and they're not trained to. Which surprises me when pilots come here and start to argue against it, because they've got half a brain of reasonable logic, they'll figure it out and keep their mouth well and truly shut, which is one of the reasons I suspect the guy who came the other day just wasn't a pilot.
Well, everything that the flight training does and trains, and NASA quote is, it's a flat stationary plane that you consider is what you're navigating with. See, and that's what the ballers have got to get back to with the double speak and rhetoric. So for all of the reference framing, what they've got to apologise to get things back to is basically a flat stationary plane that the aeroplane traverses. So it's all that mathematical jiggery pokery that makes them have these ridiculous, and let them have it, because they end up with ridiculous things like taking off at 700 miles an hour backwards. But all of those are consequences of trying to create that net zero, but those same dynamics as a flat stationary plane.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety, as we're talking about it?
Not that planes account for.
Could you repeat it, Nathan? I only heard it.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? We're talking about net force zero, which is a way to say that there is two things in play, Earth turning and motion above the turning Earth. From an anti-flat earther's point of view, they've got to try and get that to behave how it does behave when we point out Earth's not turning beneath stuff to cause 15 degrees an hour drift. So they've got to come up with an excuse to assume Earth's turning with no effect to observe. So they say whatever leaves Earth carries with it the velocity that Earth has given to it when it left the ground. So essentially, it's just remaining above the same spot. So if you jump up and down, you retain whatever 1,000 miles an hour you've got on the equator, and you just keep it, and then come back down on the exact same spot. In other words, Earth is assumed to be turning, and there's no effect to observe, says the anti-flat earther. We turn around and go, no, the globe claims that you'll have 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns beneath stuff, like gyroscopes and pendulums and bullets and footballs. That's what it's claimed to do by your high priests. The problem with that claim by your high priests and the globe is that would shorten flight times if Earth was turning underneath aeroplanes, as it is claimed to do.
And this is why you throw your high priests under the bus all the time. Very sad state of affairs. They're the ones running around teaching everybody this crap, but you throw them under the bus. Why? Because your claims don't hold up to snuff. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's what it is.
Or maybe that'll be remedied for people who go against the science of a globe Earth by telling you that no, there's only one reference frame. Go around destroying the notion that there's two and drift at 15 degrees now. So someone like Dan should just be punished for going against globe rhetoric. You know, that sort of belief should be protected, really, for those who the ilk to go out and disagree with it by saying there's only one reference frame, like Simon Dan. I mean, what kind of an idiot would go against the globe claim in that way?
Well, we point out that flights east to west should be shorter. And our opposition say no, that flights east to west are maintaining the momentum of the rotation. But they claim linear, not angular. They don't even claim angular rotation, momentum conservation. And then they start talking about how it only happens, what they're trying to claim is Coriolis, the Coriolis effect, which is, as we termed, globiolis, only happens north to south. But as I pointed out, right, before, in the past, you take any flight going north to south, you get the average flight time and the average distance, or the distance and the average flight time. And there will be absolutely zero deviation. And as I said before, George Netchuk on Ranties proved this mathematically, that there was zero deviation, while trying to prove that there would be. They have absolutely zero. They have a claim. They have a claim that negates all east to west, west to east effect that we would see from the ground, and they try and then change that claim to a north-south claim, and then they have nothing to support that. When they use real-world flight times and an average flight speed, there is nothing. They have absolutely nothing. They have absolutely nothing. There is nothing that they have. I don't know how much to stress how little they have as an argument.
It was funny, like years ago, Planner World showed up here and wanted to tell us how flights west to east actually are faster. We were like, how does that work out exactly? Shouldn't they be faster the other way? Kind of hurting your own argument there, my friend.
Fiber8 says, can't wait to be locked up with Craig, Akumu Virus and Ruhif in Guantanamo Bay for denying quote-unquote science and infringing on the religious nature of that quote-unquote science. Thanks for the super chat, Fiber8. Really appreciate the support. Any evidence
Chocolate, I think.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Hang on. Chocolate, I think what they're trying to say is the airflow, the jet, what's it called? When the airflow is going
jet streams.
Yeah, jet stream. So we're going to have 860 miles an hour jet stream just to keep up with the Earth.
Imagine all of that going on while you're trying to just fly somewhere.
Yeah, it isn't. As you pointed out, Chocolate, the runway would be moving away from you if you're observing Coriolis drift at 15 degrees an hour from the ground, as is claimed on a globe Earth. That just means that as you're standing watching the plane seem to drift, that means that Earth's turning underneath the plane. The runway's moving away from the plane as it's trying to land on it. Yeah, no one's ever accounting for this. As you said, you've watched it. I used to work near an airport. I've seen it too. I've seen all the planes lining up to land after being in a holding pattern for whatever reason. Suddenly you got a queue of planes coming down in a massive straight line.
Yep, that spans for miles. And especially, and the beautiful thing is when it happens at night, you could just see the lights, or it looks like a highway in the sky.
Wait a minute, that's
actually
right.
crazy.
That's right. That's what I've been like for the past couple months. I've been paying attention because being in the Lower East Side area, I see a lot of sky traffic, and that's exactly what it is. Like I sat for an hour and watched these planes follow this particular line in space. Like it was as if there was a highway in the sky, and I'm like, wow, there's no, like, gee, the Earth is not moving. Just let it go, fam.
You used to work at these places, yeah? So, to me, I'm thinking you're talking about this runway moving. You really want to make sure that's an east-west alignment for that runway, because imagine if you've got it north-south, then as you're coming into land, The runway's going 1,000 miles an hour that way to the side. It'd be even harder to land.
Yeah.
Well, as you
I
brought up earlier too, the whole they bring up conservation of angular momentum, like a helicopter taking off from the surface can't produce its own force to negate that.
Why wouldn't they claim orbital momentum?
Oh,
Why
right.
do they
So
go to
let me
angular?
get it straight. So your drone takes off the ground, and if it's hovering an inch off the ground, it's perpetually falling in an orbital motion. I mean, that is their claim. It's just at a higher height. But ultimately, that's what you'd have to be asserting.
Yeah, that's what they need to be asserting. They don't need to be saying angular. That's wrong.
They need to be saying orbital. No, when my plane takes off, it immediately goes into orbit, falling around the Earth at the same rate of the Earth. It's essentially geostationary, and the only thing that negates that is the engines. I mean, I'm giving you guys gold here. Technically, John is, but, you know, I'm polishing up that turd.
Well, that would not make the plane have to move a lot faster because, like the ISS is claimed to go around every 17 minutes or something around the globe Earth. So at what rate, would a plane orbit?
Just told you,
Earth?
geosynchronous.
Yeah, but that means it's just moving at the same rate.
Isn't that what they need? Net force 0? We're giving them gold here.
Yeah, it's total nonsense.
I still need
the lad from Discord said they are not claiming the conservation of angular momentum. This is the most ridiculous part about it. They're claiming the conservation of linear momentum, the miles per hour thing, not an angular thing.
That's perfect.
We did angular last week, didn't we?
That's perfect though, because if you're claiming linear momentum, then you just got to hook it up to geodesics and space-time, and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, just beg those 3 questions and you'll be fine.
I mean,
Just still need a
have
radius,
you guys ever
though.
seen the videos where the planes are trying to land and it's like insanely windy and the plane is just, it's struggling, like you could see it trying to land. And that's just because it's windy. But that's just because it's windy. Imagine now you're trying to negotiate that while the runway is moving away from you.
It wouldn't be the orbit of Earth would keep it at geosynchronous. It'd be in geosynchronous orbit. So yeah, that wouldn't be a problem.
Somebody from the
Forget
chat
about
was
that.
asking.
What about Top Gun?
Somebody from the chat earlier was asking if the piece from Berkeley is satire or not. We don't know is the honest answer. It's been speculated that it is satire, and my immediate reaction was, so what? The article's sentiment is that they're thinking about doing something anyway, therefore it generated a discussion, because obviously nothing's happening based on the information, even if it is correct, or satire. It makes no difference. But we don't know is the honest answer.
I've done a bit of research, Nath. I went and found that PBS account, checked the date and scrolled back to it. There is no matching tweet there, but as you say, as we said to Riff, it doesn't really matter. Look at it, because it's coming, boys. It's coming, because you're already trying it. You've already got your priest that you're denying, so it's coming. Somebody may be satirical, but satire is generally born from reality, people's observations of what's going off. So don't worry.
Yes, it's majoring on the minors. If you say, oh, God, you took this seriously. No, because there isn't anything to take seriously in it. If it's a postulation about what might happen. Yeah, just a discussion point that was developed from it, regardless of whether or not it's come directly from them or it's satire. It absolutely does not matter. Anyway, any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth talking of satire?
On this question, are you going to give them R?
I do in the question, yeah.
Yeah, it's still stupid. No.
That's why I don't need to concern myself with the presupposition of R when you're talking about a molten iron core. It's got a lot more problems. Unless anybody disagrees. Anybody else hold that sentiment?
What's going on?
Go on, I have answers.
Yeah. Is my mic echoing?
Yeah, you sound good, whoever you are. Good to have you. Did you have something you wanted to answer?
You guys need to really reach real history.
I love it when someone's first opener is to tell us what we should be doing. We should be reading some history. What history should we be reading, according to you?
The original inhabitants of Europe was dark skinned.
Hey, come again?
The black people that ended up in West and South Africa, they migrated there.
Okay. Are you talking in code?
The flat earth debate, jerky.
Does this have some relevance to the subject we're discussing? Fascinating though it is.
If you guys can't understand that the fact that black people migrated to South Africa and that proves a globe, I don't know what I can say to you.
You're right, I've missed it. I've missed this point completely, haven't I? I've been very silly. That is an excellent globe proof. Thank you.
Yeah, no way. No way.
Are you just muttering in disbelief there, Eli?
Of course.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Have you got a definition for mass yet? You'd have to start there, wouldn't you?
I think it started in South Africa.
I was about to start talking about the Spanish.
They don't even have a definition for gravity, Nathan. I spent like hours in with Jeremy last night and he would not define gravity. He said it was an acceleration. I was like, okay, well, we know forces cause acceleration. What force causes the acceleration that you call gravity? There was tumbleweed. Couldn't get him to define it for love nor money.
But it's really
Tell you
easy
what was interesting on that, Tony.
Hold on, just for the audience's benefit. I was going to drag it out, but I won't because I've got something to say. So, the curving of pseudo-Riemannian force space, that's space-time. So the curving of space-time is the effect, that's gravity, the effect of bending space-time. And the cause, which they also have in Einsteinian mathematics, is the uneven distribution of mass. So to succinctly describe what gravity is, or to define gravity, it's the uneven distribution of mass causing the bending of space-time.
Yeah, they won't do it. They won't do it.
But that's what it is. What do you mean won't do it? That's what you're talking about. Anti-flat earthers here, in case anybody hasn't cottoned on. Yeah, they don't like the religion that they want to defend, so they won't define what is easily debunked because it's in a pseudo-force space-time that doesn't exist. Yeah, they don't want to define that. I mean, shocking. Go ahead, Adam. Sorry for the segue.
No, it's not. It actually validates the point. No, they won't, and they won't take it on. I saw a video last night, Tony, Everett Anderson, and instead of dealing with what Tony's talking about, and in the discussion with Jeremy, he's going on about density, changing the medium, and he starts, and I'm not good at English, he starts using the terms verb and adjective or whatever, and the point being, within what he's talking about, I understand what he's saying. You need to think of it, which is the verb, etc., etc. But instead of dealing with their real issue, which is what Tony's brought to him, they do a video on what's a verb and what's an adjective against Tony, yeah? Avoiding the actual topic, whether Tony's right or wrong, it doesn't matter, because what's within the topic, but what's important is whether or not, a bit like when I got you for getting the number of units in a thing wrong, just off the top of your head, you know what I mean? That's what becomes important, because, as we've been saying, they have no argument anymore. So that's all they can do, is run away and do a little bit on whether or not Tony's use of some of the words in English was correct, irrelevant to the point within physics that we've been made.
I choose to ignore everything Adam has said and focus on the fact that he said he doesn't speak English good, when he should have said, I don't speak English very well. Let's focus on that for a few moments, ignoring everything that he said. I'm just juxtaposing what they've done, by the way, in case you hadn't cottoned on.
But it's...
I tell you what, I need to share this with you, right? One of the things that Jeremy actually admitted to, and I was gobsmacked, I was listening to, he was arguing with Jin CBR over a point. Doesn't matter what the point was, but he muted Jin CBR. And I said to him afterwards, I said, listen, Jeremy, you're muting him there. Isn't that the very criticism of Nathan that you guys apply? You insist that you can't go there because of Nathan's mute button. I said, you're doing the exact same thing. And he actually admitted that not only does he do it, that it is hypocritical, and I can view it that way. And I was like, my God, he's actually finally admitted something. But he admits that he uses the mute button to control the conversation.
You know why he's done that, though?
That you do.
I don't know.
But he finds that acceptable.
Hold on. That's not what he's done. What he's done is, so far in this show, I've unmuted 3 people who've come into the server. That's what I've done so far. However, they want you to believe that I permanently mute people, when in reality, it's a very rare occurrence. People will come on the show, and if they literally cannot shut up to the point where no one can hear anything, I have to mute them. I've got no option. But you'll see me do it. So you'll see me go over to someone like this guy, 76 Digit, and click on them so that I can physically mute them. Now that you can visually see happening when it occurs, and it's not that often. But they, by getting you to admit, or getting him to say, yeah, I also mute randomly, totally unreasonably, just like Nathan. So he's got a comparison between him unreasonably muting somebody and me doing it. Hang on a second. That's not a fair comparison. What they do, and it's one of the reasons the show started in the first place, is mute you for totally unreasonable reasons. For instance, Kiwi gave an example only the other day, where he's in a discussion, somebody's claiming that they've got knowledge of his sealed military records, making up complete crap about him. When he goes to challenge the person on the nonsense they're making up about him, about his sealed records, he gets muted. Totally unreasonable. Now here, in a 2-hour discussion, we will listen to the same parroted nonsense for 2 straight hours from an opponent. Now, will I interrupt them to point out their contradiction, doublespeak and fallacy use? Oh, absolutely. But to them, me shutting down a fallacious argument by interrupting it is muting them, as opposed to going into the server and turning them off. That doesn't happen. Not here, but he's got a nice comparison where, the audience now thinks I do as he does, and just unreasonably mutes people because they don't like what they've got to say. No, that's not the case here. We listen to what people have got to say and then rip it to shreds while they try and talk through us.
Yeah, I spotted that as well in what Anthony said.
I think what Anthony is pointing out is that it's projection on their part.
I was talking.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah. What you do, Nathan, is you mute funding muting. The majority of the time I've ever heard you muting anyone is because of their funding muting. And this started before you even started labeling it funding muting. So they weren't allowing conversations to happen because they were over-talking. They weren't allowing points to be made by over-talking. So you were muting the over-talking types, people who are trying to mute, basically stop the flow of information.
Yeah, but to be
fair,
stop someone's retort.
When somebody else is talking, they won't shut up, but when you then stop talking, they shut up.
To be fair, Jeremy was condoning what he does because he's trying to create the conversation. But when Nathan does it, it's not acceptable. And when I pointed out that it was hypocritical for him to take that position, he said, no, it isn't. Well, yeah, I can see how you would interpret it that way. But the reality is it is true. Nathan tries to simulate the conversation, and so does Jeremy. And Jeremy, it is hypocritical. But it's okay when Jeremy does it. It's not okay when Nathan does it.
Again, Anthony buying into the idea that I am completely comparable to how Jeremy mutes people. Right, thank you, Anthony.
No, Jim Panda mutes people to stop them talking. Nathan mutes people just to shut them up because they won't stop talking. Do you know what I mean?
That was the reason why I left last night, because he was muting me when I was trying to stop him from lying about me. He continuously misrepresents what I say. I'll say blue, and he'll regurgitate it back as red to his audience. I'll try interrupting that to say, that's not what I said, you misquoted me. And he'll say, stop me. He'll just mute me to stop me from interrupting, to stop the audience from here that he's being dishonest.
I think, Tony, Nathan's trying to say you should have showed him to shove it up his bum with his false equivalence.
Yeah, he is. But let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. It's the same crime, as it were.
No, I disagree.
Whoa.
I think Nathan's defending himself correct. The way you've just described what Jem Panda's doing is not what Nathan does. But Jem would happily allow you to equivocate the two behaviours, I think.
Exactly.
Right, and that's projection on their part because they're projecting what they're doing onto Nathan, which is not
Perfect. You
the
took
same
my
thing as
you
what
took my
they do.
conclusion, John. That was going to be my summary to the end of it. Precisely. They're projecting their ill or digressions, ill-mannered behaviour, bad behaviour, directly onto me. So when they come and say Nathan mutes everybody, that's projection. They mute people, but they hold up their opponent as doing what they do. Pure projection. It's the Hillary Clinton technique.
Yeah, it is pure projection.
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Oh, that was another debate. That was another debate point. We spent about 40 minutes arguing how right. I always get the words astrology and astronomy. I always get them mixed up in my head. I don't know why. I know the difference between them, but when I'm speaking it under pressure, I always get the wrong one. I always conflate them accidentally. And the minute I do, rather than just let it go so that we can address the point that's being made, they want to dwell on it as though every time you say astrology and you mean astronomy, it makes you sound retarded. Okay, I accept that. But what about the point I've made about it, which is that it's not science, it's pseudoscience, both of them. They're both pseudoscience. What about that point? They don't want to talk about that. They just want to say, you don't understand the difference.
Hang on, I don't agree with that.
made a video on that then, Tony.
I don't agree with that.
Astronomy.
Hold on. Well, number one, the way I remember them is, although it's not the etymology, me, I try and remember it as naming stuff, because that's basically all it is, coming up with stories, naming stuff in the sky. So astro naming, no, that's not the etymology. But logic is the etymology of astrology. It's the logic of the sky, as opposed to just giving stuff names. Yeah? So the names are kind of set in stone in a way in terms of what they're just describing. They're just describing the shapes the lights make to give you an idea of which bit they're pointing at, nothing more. But that's just the logic of the movements. Now, don't get me wrong, that description is not the current description of astrology, and I understand that. It's been demonized, but that's all it is. So that's how I get the comparison between the two. But as you're trying to point out, they'll major on the minors because you've messed up one word and said astronomy when you mean to say how the lights are moving, or how Mystic Meg said something, if you're using the current day explanation for what astrology is. They'll focus on that rather than the point you make about it not being science. My objection comes because astrology, is anybody claiming it to be science? Because if not, it's not pseudoscience.
Well, they claim it's pseudoscience.
What is pseudoscience?
Astrology claim.
Hold on, Neil. Hold on, Brian. Did you just ask what is pseudoscience, Neil?
Yeah, in astronomy, why is it pseudoscience? I want Anthony to explain.
Well, pseudoscience is a non-adherence to the scientific method, as Anthony explained earlier. But as astronomy
with the mistaken belief that it's science.
Correct. But astronomy is most definitely asserting that. You know, statements from people like deGrasse Tyson has been in the past, it's science whether you like it or not, or science is right whether you like it or not, which in and of itself isn't an untrue statement, but he's associating that with his field. So it is we don't have to go far to give examples of how astronomy is claimed to be science. It is.
I don't think astrology is, though.
No, that's why I objected.
Go on then, right?
That's what I was trying to clear up.
Yeah, but do you not remember the likes of, I can't remember the famous card readers, but those people that read cards and do like star sign predictions and all that kind of stuff, they make a living out of what they call, they would consider that to be science.
Are they calling it science, though?
No, that's what I'm trying to clear up. I actually know about this stuff. No, officially, astrology officially claims, and I'm involved in it, claims it to be a pseudoscience. They do not claim science.
Hang on, that doesn't make sense either.
Claim a pseudoscience.
You can't claim yourself to be pseudoscience, right? That's a contradiction in terms. You can't come up with a story or an explanation for something that hasn't been validated and then say, this is a pseudoscience, right? Pseudo has a meaning. Now, pseudo four-space geometry, for example. Pseudo-geometry, right? Now, we all know what pseudo means. Fake, sham, not real, right? But pseudoscience also has a specific definition. So you can't call yourself pseudoscience because that's a tacit acceptance that you're not claiming to be science. So if anything, if you incorrectly define yourself as pseudoscience, you're as far removed from pseudoscience as you could be at that stage, because you're acknowledging that you're not science, and pseudoscience is a claim of science where one doesn't exist.
Yeah, but I see the problem happened. The reason that it ended up being claimed to be a pseudoscience is because astronomy is claimed to be a science, and so to make the distinction between the two.
Astronomy.
So they wouldn't get involved.
So
they
it's
wouldn't
the
mix people up.
I've followed you now. So you're saying the bastards who come up with the naming of shit and call themselves science want to decry something that hasn't necessarily even called itself science. It's just the logic of the movements. But they need to be put down and demonized and turned into tarot readers and called pseudoscience, even though in reality that is also projection. The ones who are actually claiming to be science, therefore by definition pseudoscience, point at the opponent who's just logging the movements and call them pseudoscience. Pure projection.
I've got it here on. I've done a quick Google search, right? And that's exactly correct. So they're setting you up for this. So is astrology considered a science? Astrology has not demonstrated its effectiveness in controlled studies and has no scientific validity, and thus regarded as pseudoscience, which I think is false in terms of an assumption, unless it's making the claim. But what's nice then next, look, is they set you up with the old okey doke chart. Astrology is not considered as a science. Astronomy is a science which is used in astrology. Astronomy deals with the movements of various stars and planets. It is taught as science subject, as a branch of mathematics. Now, if that's not an okey doke, I don't know what is.
It is taught as science as a branch of mathematics.
It is taught as a science subject as a branch of mathematics, yeah.
Oh my God.
I'll put it on screen so you can actually bloody see that. It's shocking.
Yeah.
Sounds like a violation of the law of non-contradiction to me.
Absolutely. But that's the truth. And that's always going to be the case with anything heliocentric. And astronomy is most definitely a heliocentric pastime.
Yeah, because I was asked to explain why is it the case that people that are skilled in astronomy, why is it that they're allowed to call themselves science if what you say is correct? And I said, well, look at Professor Danny Falkner. He considers himself to be a scientist. He considers himself to be doing science, and he holds a PhD in astronomy, apparently. Given that that is on face value true, which for the purposes of this we are accepting that it's true, it means that, is it likely, given that you can't teach pseudoscience in the national curriculum, that something that is declared pseudoscience by definition will then get taught, or will it get removed from the national curriculum because it's no longer science? Because in this instance, Jeremy brought up an article that said that New Earth creationism, I think he said, was pseudoscience, and it's not allowed to be taught in schools. Okay, so if astronomy is then considered pseudoscience because it's not science when it purports to be, then that must also be banned too, because if you're going to ban one topic for being pseudoscience, you've got to ban them all, surely. And he didn't like that. He said that was being ridiculous.
Are you saying that creationism is not allowed to be taught in school because it's pseudoscience? What?
I'm saying that Jeremy says that. That was Jeremy's claim.
Shout out to Chronicles of the Uncovered and Convinced, sorry. Wonderful show as always. Thank you very much for the super chat. Sorry to interrupt you, Arwin.
You always need to do that, don't you, Nathan?
My bad.
I've never heard of it before. I was taught about creation in school in just like a Bible class thing. Right now, this new Earth creation, I don't know what that is.
I don't know what it is.
But is that really relevant to just like creation versus evolution teaching in school? I mean, you don't teach an entire religion in school. I get that, but just creation as an opposition of evolution seems very reasonable to me, and I do think it's still out there. So,
yeah, and that very reasonableness is justified for one of the reasons for which you can teach New Earth creation, because it says in the national curriculum that you must follow this national curriculum unless there is a good reason not to. So, if you've got a good reason not to follow the national curriculum, that means that you can depart from it and you can talk about New Earth creationism if that is a good reason. I don't even know what it is. I was just arguing the advocate position. But my point was that what he considers to be pseudoscience if you were to apply that to astrology or astronomy, either, both, or, then they're not going to be allowed to be taught in schools, are they? And how many things are taught in school as science when we all know that they're not?
Astronomy is not taught in school.
Hold on, just one
Just
sec.
before, just on the New Earth business.
I think you're going to do what I was going to do anyway.
And
go
Young
ahead.
Earth. Young Earth is like still Ball Earth, but 6,000-year-old Ball Earth, as far as I'm aware how it's applied. And then the only time I've been New Earth is like the New Earth out post like apocalypse, Return of Christ. That's New Earth. But the only other one I know is Young Earth, which is like say it's a perversion of a conflation of Ball Earth and biblical timelines.
But they also adhere to. But they also adhere to one of the.
The Earth is a ball.
They also adhere to one of the ontological primitives that we also adhere to. They just have a timeline and a ball Earth.
It didn't matter. It doesn't matter what the definition is, and it doesn't matter how I understand it or don't understand it. I was arguing just the advocate position, the opposing position, that was basically, if you're going to say that this particular topic is pseudoscience, that would explain why people like Dr. Danny Falkner with his astronomy PhD will never admit that their PhD is pseudoscience, because it would then exclude them from teaching their believed science discipline in a context of school.
Right.
They would never ever do that.
Or just teaching it generally. I mean, that's why someone like Prof. Phil Bell hangs around here, because we directly threaten that, don't we?
He's just an idiot.
Yeah, an idiot living in fear of his credibility and legacy being absolutely destroyed by what we point out as wrong in their dissemination of information that up until we were around was taken as read to be correct. And was to be taken as read. What he says as a professor is to be considered correct. He's science. We come along and suddenly we take that away from them.
What do you think Danny Faulkner's doing? The same thing. He's concerned.
What have you got up, Anthony?
It's a good justification, that, Nathan. They're basically here spending that time because they know they're going to end up losing their legacy.
That's what I say to him, very specifically, to Phil Bell. Yeah, I chuckle too when I say it in chat. He doesn't know I'm sat chuckling while I type that, but now he does.
That's a melon messer. I like it.
Yeah, and he knows it.
What are the... Danny Faulkner's doing the same thing. He's always lurking in 24/7 from the sources I know that are there. He wrote a book. He claimed, if I'm quoting him right, he can answer any questions, and he's never lost to a flat earther, something to that effect. Can someone quote him properly there, if I haven't?
I haven't found anything that I've been unable to refute.
I have all the answers.
That started off. That was.
I have the answers.
Rewind. There was a bit before that. So he basically gives the sentiment that flat earthers come across this information and it seems legit, because they haven't got any way of debunking it. They just go onto Google and look it up and can't find an answer to what seems like a good flat earth argument. Well, they haven't come to me. I have the answers. There's never been a flat earth question that I haven't been able to refute. Right, fast forward from there to a flat earther standing at a flat earth conference asking him how you have gas pressure without a container, and he does a little Google search and comes across blue marbles to a container example. And
No. That's not what happened. He asked him, how do you have gas pressure without a container? And he sat there like a bunny in the headlights and he froze. When under pressure, when challenged, there was a question that he was unable to refute. He literally did nothing. It was many weeks later when he found the video on Google.
You prompted that question, didn't you?
Yeah, but he went on to his interview on the radio that he did, the interview that we quote. I'll dig it out if I have to for the after show. He specifically notes that flat earthers just do a Google search and can't find the answer. So he's noting the sort of ineptitude of flat earthers who just do a quick cursory Google search. And then he did exactly that.
What's worse?
That's the best part.
One shot.
Yeah, that he posted.
No. I was just going to say that's the best part. That you said, oh, you poor guys, you just go on Google and do a little search or YouTube or whatever. And then that's literally what he does. especially with a video that we've had already seen, pulled apart, made fun of already. Like, it's hilarious that he actually chose that.
Exactly. I don't want to set up a false dichotomy for him, but it does leave him with that premise that he did exactly that. He didn't watch the video. He just did a quick Google search and sent it to somebody. Or he did watch the video with all of the containers in there and entropy taking place so that there was an equalization of gas pressure, and still, against all his proposed background in science, still came to the conclusion that that was an example. I don't know which is worse.
No, it's the former. I'm almost certain it's always projection. You know, people who basically don't really know a great deal about flat Earth but feel that their general knowledge is good enough will immediately go forth and say, everybody else would just do a quick wiki search. Oh, really? So you mean you've done a quick Google search and you happen to know the answer to the question that came up first that was put to you by a flat earther. Therefore, you know better than the entirety of everybody on the internet, and they just haven't come to you. And then when push comes to shove, you do precisely what you've criticised others for not doing because you haven't done it. And there you are, tap, tap, tap into Google. There's blue marble. There is gas pressure without a container. It literally was the words I typed in. That's got to be good enough.
And even worse than that is the guy who made the video is running around afterwards asking people, asking people, please give me a citation that a pipe is a container.
I got worse. I led him beautifully in a few chats. I've still got the screenshots where he literally says, quote, show me a citation that says an open container is a container, end quote.
I'm not finished here. I still think, Nath, if what you're saying is he's typed in to Google gas pressure without a container, that means he believes that there's things out there that are demonstrable other than he's looking up to the sky as his proof. He actually believes it's all there and it's real, it's plausible. You can have this contradiction. Otherwise, why do the search and just accept the first thing happily, randomly? You have to have some false belief that actually is plausible. Therefore, a complete denial of natural law, yeah? So...
Hey, Nathan, I have a citation that an open container is a container. It's my source is Danny Falkner. The reference is the thread that you had with him, and he described open container. So that he would be the reference in that particular.
So he specifically says in that video there is an open container.
Well, no, in his question to you, asking you for a citation, he said, show me that an open container is a container.
So he could literally be the citation for the guy whose video he chose to use to prove that premise. Right. Isn't that adorable?
Sure. Is an open Coke can and Coke can?
Nope. Let's not descend this into the absurd right at the end of the live show, because I'm going to thank first and foremost both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Stay tuned if you're watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, as there will be an after show to follow. Another massive thank you to today's live audience for smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
They stay carbonated. Then I could buy the 2 liters.
That damn entropy.
Chocolate, you don't understand that.
Chocolate, you don't understand that an open Coke can is not a container if it's open. It's only when it's sealed closed that makes it a container.
Oh, damn. So when I open it, is it still containing the soda inside, or?
No, it's called
all your soda's all over the table.
Oh, it's something else. Okay. Transforms after that. Word.
Chocolate, what happens to the gas pressure, the bubbles, when you leave it open?
I don't know. That high pressure inside the can tends to leave the can. You know, hence
I
my
got a
soda
fun
being
question
flat.
I want
Which
answered.
direction? Which direction is that gas leaving?
I think Sleeping Warrior's right. That's the perfect proof. A soda can.
Hey, do you guys know if there's any proof to that? Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a problem with that. You're right. The CO2 will escape the can, but only because the bubbles are coming out of solution and they're displacing themselves. So if you were to let that soda can sit there, say half empty, and let all the bubbles come out of the fluid, the can itself would in fact still be full of CO2 because CO2 is heavier than air. So it's going to stay within the container. It's just that there's more CO2 in the form of a liquid inside the Coke, so that when it evaporates, it actually it takes up more volume, so it does overflow it out. The CO2 is no longer in the Coke, but it will be in the can.
That's incorrect.
It will eventually dissipate.
Hold on.
Well done, Neil.
CO2 is just another unbonded gas. So when you say it's heavier, what do you mean heavier? Heavier is a downward bias when you're weighing a solid in the medium of air. So to describe any gas as being heavy would be to assert that it's going down. Gas doesn't behave that way, any gas. It's all got gaps between it. So it'll all have gas, other gases work its way between the gaps in all instances.
There's literally a dozen simple little experiments you could do to show that CO2 is in fact heavier than air.
Can you describe evaporation for me, please?
Sorry. In all circumstances, entropy will still apply. Yeah, you won't defy entropy by defining this gas as having a weight. It will still succumb to entropy because it has gaps between it. So a molecule of oxygen can go through the hole in the can and work its way between the carbon dioxide. Now that process of diffusion is called entropy. That is a law of nature that will apply always. So you're telling me there's an experiment to show that it's, going down with weight? No, you won't, because gas doesn't behave that way.
Absolutely.
Gas doesn't behave that way. It has gaps between it. Other gases work their way between the gaps. Now, you can tell me there's an experiment or you can refute what I've said.
I'm wondering what you're talking about has anything to do with weight of gas.
It doesn't have... Third time.
Entropy.
Third time. It doesn't have weight. Weight is
That's
a
your
solid...
assertion.
Is Jen Panda going to moan when I eventually have to shut this guy down for talking through me after ignoring me 3 times? Because so far I've explained why he's wrong. No, you won't have a layer of carbon dioxide in the can because it's got gaps between it and other gases work their way between the gaps. That dispersion is a law of nature. Yeah, don't ignore me and tell me it's got weight. Again, when I've disputed that and refuted it with an example of how gas behaves and cited a natural law. Don't just tell me it's got weight again. I will interrupt you if you do. That's what I thought. So, dick brain, no, it won't form a homogeneous layer. Gases don't behave that way. You're just wrong, making up nonsense. Why would you come here talking crap about what gas doesn't do? Why would you come here with this second law of thermodynamics entropy violation? Why would you explain that gases are homogeneous and form layers in cans? Are you an idiot?
Yep, I'm an idiot, Nathan.
Yeah, well, that's what we come to expect. You sound like the pilot guy.
Call names. Just call names. That's all you
Idiot! Gases don't behave that way, idiot. To assert that a gas will not have other gases diffuse between the particle gaps is idiotic. That is you. It's not a name. I've proven it with your words. And by taking apart your nonsensical claim that you'll have a homogeneous layer of carbon dioxide. You will not.
Not on the long run, anyway.
Yeah, entropy.
It's just denser than the air medium for as long as it remains homogeneous. As soon as it mixes in, and it will over time, yeah, it just averages out with the rest,
Instantly.
the inhomogeneous layer
Instantly
of the air.
and always. Not when it will succumb to entropy. It will always be succumbing to entropy without exception. It's a law of nature. Defied by the guy who just made that crap example about a can and carbon dioxide, who clearly doesn't understand how gas behaves. Any other crap about how carbon dioxide behaves, mate? You want to spew here?
I mean, I'm trying to understand what the point of what was that you were trying to bring up anyway, because everybody knows in reality, you leave a soda can open long enough, it will no longer have any carbonation. So what are you trying to do? What was the point, Mr. Pilot? Because that's who you sound like, Mr. Vaping Pilot.
Does sound like the pilot.
He's trying to give weight to a gas.
Precisely.
No gas has weight because the weight is defined within the medium of air, and all gases move in all directions at all times. Carbon dioxide is, in a concentrated form, more dense than air. But what this man is forgetting about is high pressure to low pressure. So if there's a lower pressure in the can, then the higher pressure outside will fill the can. If there's a higher pressure in the can, then it will go to the outside. It's about high and low pressure. That's the actual argument. You know, like, he doesn't understand that. So if it happened that there was some carbon dioxide that didn't leave the can immediately due to a higher density, right? Yeah, but that may happen, but it won't stay that way, because there will be temperature changes and movement within the gases, and because the gases are always moving. So if there is a higher pressure in the can, it will go to the lower pressure outside. If there's a lower pressure in the can, there will be the higher pressure outside will move in. So,
right.
You know,
Hello, everything would be a juice then. There'd be no soda.
The bigger the
Hold
opening,
on. So
the faster
you're
the
saying that
evaporation.
once the can's open, you're saying that once the can's open, the pressures are not the same inside and outside the can?
Yeah, it's a highly pressurized can. And
Not
then
once
you
it's
open
open.
it, and then over time, entropy takes hold.
What will happen is, as you open the can, because you've got the highly pressurized system inside, more carbon dioxide is naturally dissolvable under higher pressure. When you open the can, the pressure at the top allows the surface to equalize with the air pressure. What will happen is you'll get until the Coke's flat, you'll have a higher surface, higher pressure just above, because it's always releasing carbon dioxide. It's going to be adding in, but it's always going to be equating, and that rate will slow over time because it's more rapid at first as it tries to equalize. And
Right.
that's why your Coke fizzes, and when you fizz when it opens, because there's more. It's soluble under higher pressure, so it's injected in and then bottled quick, so it stays there. When you open it, that's why you're getting all that fizz, because it's no longer soluble in the Coke, that amount. The air pressure around it is forcing out the other, or allowing it out, because there's no pressure to escape. It stays in under the high pressure. So that's the kind of dynamic, roughly, what's going off when you do that.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
It's
also
dissolved under pressure. If the pressure goes, then it undissolves. It literally comes out of it.
Yeah, there will still be in there, but not to the point. There'll still be a small amount of effervescence. But check the war room, Nathan. I've done you a thumb.
Okay. Did I say war room?
Yeah, stuck it in the war room.
So the consequences of this, though, are that outer space, is fake. The gas would fill that area of volume if the sky was a vacuum, which it isn't. Outer space is fake. What am I looking at? In the war room?
A Coke can.
A picture of a Coke can.
Container? Not a container.
That's nonsense.
Well, it's not my claim.
This guy said he's got thousands of experiments.
I didn't get the reaction from the guy. So outer space is fake. Gas fills space. That's what gas does. Expands in all directions, high velocity. It doesn't have weight. It's not going down. Contrary to what crap you came up with this can example and carbon dioxide. That is not how gas behaves. It does expand in all directions at high velocity to fill whatever volume it's got. There you go. It's interrupting me before I've made my conclusion. Unreasonable, you see. When people mute me, like this guy's just done, I see that as totally intolerable. I haven't made my point about how fundamentally wrong you are about the nature of existence, my friend. You thought gases had weight and go down like a bouncy ball poured into a fish tank. Yeah, that's fundamentally retarded, like PhD clown Thunderfoot declared. Now, idiotic to declare that gases have got weight and are going down, because they are anisotropic, inhomogeneous mixture in our air around us, and all of them expand at high velocity into whatever volume they've got. That's how gas behaves. It's a natural law. So space is fake. Yeah, only want to talk at the end of my conclusion, eh?
Well, by introducing a gas into a space that's already filled, is that, and then pointing out the increased pressure within the area that you just pumped into the room, what is that proving? I don't get it. I don't know.
Where is this guy?
That you can create a differential in existing gas pressure, which must be ultimately under containment to begin with.
That differential is not going to stay there unless you create another differential. I'm with John. What are you saying? It's like saying if I blow a bit more air in the balloon, yeah, well done.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's non sequitur to even assert that gas isn't filling space. That's
maybe he's going to get one of those thousands of experiments. That's why he's not answering you.
He just wanted to answer in the middle of my conclusion. And then when there was a long protracted silence after the conclusion that space is fake, outer space is fake, NASA are liars, none of the shit you believe in the sky vacuum is real, we're not going to Mars, we haven't been to the moon. All of it's lies. It all violates natural law. We'd all be dead if any of that was true. I haven't had a reaction to that, just a reaction in the middle of the conclusion. Maybe I need my mute button, Jem. What do you reckon, mate? Maybe this guy's stunned silence is me muting him. Or maybe he just interrupted my conclusion and then didn't respond after the devastating truth that outer space is fake. Your little NASA faith in the little rockets going to Narnia isn't real. Talking to Jem Panda. The idiot who believes in this crap, peddled to children.
In a courtroom, silence is acceptance.
Yes. Of course, he's accepting this because he hasn't responded. Not at all fallacious.
Well, you did say that NASA feeds this stuff to little kids. Well, so do the schools. Do you send your kid to school, Nathan?
No.
No. You don't?
No, I homeschool both of them, as does my wife.
But what curriculum are you supposed to teach your kids, though?
Sorry,
I mean, you just can't teach them whatever you want,
So when I say I homeschool, you immediately assume that I follow the curriculum from the school. And I need to follow somebody else's rules and regs about how to educate my kids. No, I don't. That's why I homeschool them.
Hell yeah. My man.
That may change. Certainly in our local council, from what I understand, they are, as they've been for quite a number of years, suggesting, more like threatening, that you'll have to fall in line with the education process regardless of if you homeschool or not. But from what I glean, they've been threatening that for a long time, probably just to put people off. I don't know. Either way.
Well, Nathan, in New York, my wife has to give a monthly report.
Oh, we have to do that too. I don't think ours is monthly unless you do something wrong. So ours is annually. And if they assess the annual report, that, to be fair, I don't actually do that bit. My wife does that. But she shows me and I read it through and
I'm not sure.
But if you get it, if you displease them, then they'll assess you out every month. So maybe you've done something wrong. No, you're a different place.
No, that's in New York. Any other state? There's like a few states that's like Chicago. New York, I think Philly too. You have to like monthly or every 6 months, something like that. Because I know I drive it to the school to drop off their progress.
May I have a word with this guy? I homeschooled all three of my children. What is your point? I'd like to have a back and forth with him.
I think he's commending me, actually.
Let's find out. What's your point in asking that?
Okay. Matthias, I think he's talking to you.
No, he's here. Go on. What's your point? Since I also homeschool three of my kids.
Come on, say well done, 10th as well.
He's going to say, my man.
Gosh, be patient.
In there. I can't actually see him. And maybe he's dropped. Unless I'm blind.
No, maybe he's going to come back.
He was commending Nathan. That's why he said, my man.
No, he wasn't.
He thought Nathan was going to say, I have to follow the curriculum that the state gives me.
Yeah, he was condescending in his tonality. I'm just wondering why.
Even if you got to follow a curriculum, which at some point you're going to have to, because you're going to need them to take the exams, it doesn't stop you going, this is what you have to regurgitate. What do you think of this? Yeah, and then discussing with each other, right? So, just like I do after my kids have received their state education, we discuss these nonsense points, these topics, yeah? So, remember what Nathan's blessed to be able to do is have that time with his kids to really give some brilliant education, and they'll fly their exams. But the extra stuff they're getting is what,
they're not getting any extra stuff. I mean,
they're getting you all the time. It's that's so
what I mean by that is I'm not telling them about flat Earth, as in I'm not teaching them about that. Now, I know some people get on their high horse about being told that they're not allowed to, but in my case, a few relatives have said, hold on a second, why are they talking about globe stuff? This is my eldest more than the youngest. I'm like, well, she can talk about what she wants. She's watching it on her iPad, so what do you want me to do? They're like, because they know I'm a flat earther, don't you correct her? And I'm like, no. When I teach her critical thought. At some point, I'll expect her to question it of her own volition. I'm not going to tell her what to think. If she wants to be a heliocentrist, or believe in Santa, or whatever, I don't care. She's her own person. Same with the youngest when she's more coherent or more intelligent. She's only 3. But I don't care if she walks around talking about the globe. I want her to have critical thought. That's it.
That's probably the point I was trying to make poorly. And what I'm saying is you've got to do the topic, yeah? Whether it's history, science, whatever those things are. But you've got one-on-one with your child. Yeah, the kid's not just copying it down. So that you are going to foster critical thought because you're engaging with the child. You're talking it to one-on-one, not 1 to 30, where there is very little critical thought. The point there is and that's what I tried to do in my boys on those issues. I didn't sit down and go, the Earth's flat. They knew that from the other listening to me, not talking to them. Do you know what I mean? As the same for your kids. But it's important to engage in the history and the sociology, all of those things. You are a decent parent, whether they're homeschooled or not. You should still be engaged in your child's education. And if they're not homeschooled, you really should be talking to your kids, find out what the bloody hell they're being taught. Because,
well, let me give Nathan thumbs up here, because obviously we homeschooled our kids before this. I was aware of the show, any of that, but we did the same thing. How do you do critical thought, logic, all those things? We did that on all subjects. So when I presented the evidence, I say, hey guys, look at this information about the Earth being flat and tell me what you think. And I didn't try to make them, and they're adults now, they have kids and so forth. And they all came back and they're all flat earthers. They said, yeah, that's something's wrong there. That doesn't make any sense. And so, yeah, they're going to grow up just fine.
So what you want them to grow up as, not people with set amounts of knowledge, but as you say, people that are able to make their own informed choices based on the evidence in front of them.
Well, that's what sales taught me. Sales taught me if you rescue people, you always have to rescue them because it depends on you to rescue them. If you just teach them so-called ABCs of life and logic and things and let them on their own to experience life, then they won't need rescuing. It's like you teach a person to fish, then they can feed themselves, kind of a thing.
I got an example from the Depp trial, which I thought was quite quaint, although I don't necessarily agree with the sentiment of not saying no, but I'll just explain what he said. So he's saying when he raised his kids, he didn't like to tell them no, and he qualified what he meant. It's like if you see a kid trying to put a screwdriver in the electrical outlet, maybe appeal to them and say, is there an alternative to doing this? Is there a better way, perhaps? That's how he qualified it. Now, I would just say no and probably yank them away from the socket, but that's just me. But my point is still the same. His idea of that, not necessarily telling them what they should or shouldn't do, just asking them to consider what might the alternatives be, that's essentially critical thought, isn't it? How does this actually stack up as what it is? In that physical example where they might die if they don't get your sentimental logic in the moment. But there we go.
I used to ask my kids, Nathan, that exact thing. So we'd get to a point where, you could I'd say, right, it's Dr. Pepper time. Yeah? What's the worst that can happen? And what's the best that can happen if you continue doing that? And make them think, yeah, maybe I should put those scissors down or take them out my nose.
Yeah, it's amazing how this played out. Let me just round off my point. Because my kids know the same people I know. Those people, once they found out I was flat Earth, they went to my kids and said, you're only believing flat Earth because your dad's a flat earther. You know what my kid's response was? He said, no, my dad never forced us on anything. He says, he has some information for us to look at and make up our own mind, is what he told us. And we have made up our own mind. And so that's the beauty of it.
Actually, I'm kind of lying, and I should really disclaim that, because if anybody actually spent any time around me, they'd probably say, no, what you said on that show wasn't true. Because what I do when I see them watching stuff about the globe is tut and huff and puff and stuff. And they're going to pick up on that without me wanting them to. Do you know what I mean? So I think about it and I go, no, I don't tell them they shouldn't believe in it, but I go, probably mutter something under my breath as I'm watching them watch it. You know what I mean? So,
in my house, you bring up the globe, you get no dinner.
Very extreme end of the scale then, Neil.
Well, I have an influencer, remember. I have the older guy that influences the other two.
Oh, man. I sat in my vehicle and watched the puppy cry for help and try to jump out the window for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I go, oh, man, I'm not worried about that stuff. Okay. Yep. Well, I mean, that's you. Me, I wouldn't be all in that business. That's not me.
What the heck are you guys talking about? What are you talking about?
I'm worried about you the most.
Are you hot micing,
I
Dom?
sat in my vehicle and watched the puppy cry for help and try and jump out the window for about 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, he's hot micing.
A bit.
To go stand next to the car.
Oh, damn, someone muted him.
Gio's drinking again.
No, someone muted him.
I was
getting into that. There was cats jumping off buildings and all sorts.
Don Gio had a few too many again.
You know dogs.
Leave him on serve mute. He's a bit too incoherent. We missed the middle part anyway. We muted him in the exciting bit. Bloody hell.
Just to stay on the kids now. And I wonder whether... I don't doubt if I ask my kids what shape the Earth is. I mean, there's a stair and stationary Earth map above our dining room table. It's there, and they've heard me talking enough. I don't think there would be a question if anyone asked them. I don't think they'd be out shouting it, but I think it's a kind of a matter-of-fact thing within the household. So it's not discussed in the house because that's all I do online. I don't want to talk about that with the kids anyway. They know, you know what I mean? They've heard every bit of the rhetoric indirectly. Kind of a, let me get it right, mute point in the house, if you know what I mean. It wouldn't be correct to be wrong, as in, you know what I mean? It's just not discussed in the house anymore. It used to be when I was first into it with my wife and stuff, but think the kids are aware, but it's kind of just an accepted point.
Yeah, there's a rule in our house. You can bring up, we usually have discussions at the dinner table, and whatever they bring up, we talk about it. Flat Earth is off limits.
So you can talk about genocide, you can talk about war, it's all good. But flat Earth off the table.
Yes, because of the confrontation with me and my oldest son. But I really don't, not anymore. I just ignore him, basically. But, yeah, he thinks the Earth is hollow now, so.
Well, if he's already changing his mind within his own journey, there's a good chance that he might end up at flat Earth because he's migrating. So at least he's trying things out.
I think
because he's smart.
As of now,
He's
an anti-flat earther.
No, he's too smart for even that. He knows. He freaking knows.
Well, I've said this before. We had a concaver on recently, and the guy had a lot more in common with us that he didn't, if you know what I mean. So in terms of just being a concaver means that you've rejected a lot of mainstream narratives. So that does put you a lot more in line with us than a global or anti-flat earther ever will be.
No, they're worse.
No, they're not. They've fundamentally rejected a mainstream religion and moved on to something else that's just as stupid. But that doesn't matter. They've rejected the mainstream... If back in the day, did you ever watch Lord Stephen Christ's videos? Because he actually had in some instances, some really good information, if you ignore the concave stuff. And the flat earthers at the time would say, oh yeah, well, you've got to mix in good information with the lies of concave. That's how they do it, blah, blah, blah. They're like, no, I see it as chew the meat and spit out the bones. If there's good stuff in there, there's good stuff in there. It doesn't matter. Kent Hovind's the same. Chew the meat, spit out the bones. Doesn't matter that they oppose you, especially when it comes to something like concave, because fundamentally they do not accept the standardized Western world heliocentric religion.
But they replace it with something that is just as nutty and doesn't learn the lessons. Mainly, hey, there's no curvature.
Right. So that doesn't. Wouldn't you say that parallels most, if not all, of people outside of this show right now? Because most, if not all, people outside of this show right now in this arena, that's flat earthers, have got some crazy notion of some crazy model that they've reified into existence. How is that any different? The fact that it ain't flat. Oh, well, and suddenly, no, they're just crazy nonsense spewers. Yeah, well, we call our own flat earthers crazy nonsense spewers when they reify crazy models, don't we? How's that any different? My point is, normally, when someone's rejected a mainstream narrative, they've got a lot more in common, or chances are they've got a lot more in common with you than they've got against you, even if they're arguing with you about the difference between your non-mainstream model, if you've got one, and their non-stream model, if they've got one.
I don't know, man. I see it different. Sorry, I'll keep it short. But I see it differently. If you're going to break through such a massive lie, only to end up pretty much replacing it with almost exactly the same type of lie, then you're worse off, because every part of that discovery could have been a journey towards actually figuring out what's going on, and even our minds work, and they haven't done it. They just replaced it. So they're off worse, right?
Yeah,
because they're not going to wake up from it anymore. They already did, and they replaced it with something just as bad.
The reason you and I and most people on this show can make that statement is with hindsight. So only till not so recently, we were in the boat. We were still full from the feast of nonsense. You, me, and everybody on this panel. We all got here and gobbled it down. Nobody will lie and say they didn't. Maybe QE. But there we go. He's an anomaly. But other than QE and maybe a couple of others, most people at least had a little nibble at the feast of nonsense. Right? Now, if we hadn't progressed to where we are now, we wouldn't have that hindsight that Arwen's just disseminated. So we could be in that boat.
Oh,
we aren't. Just because I've defended the globe all my life doesn't mean that I didn't know the Earth was flat. I was just an enthusiast, and I got lost in the process.
It's not just that, Owen. We've both had a good couple of courses at the buffet, haven't we? I have. I've pulled my hand up, you know. I've thought about trees, big trees, little trees, you know, many other things. Yeah. And I think at times I'm thinking it's real. Yeah. In the past, it is. Only as you start to really work through it, and that you're not going to build models, do these little things that create a paradigm that's in no way any better than a hollow Earth. Yeah, it's no more real. What I imagined 4 years ago, yeah, as a flat earther than a hollow Earth version. It's got no more validity.
Well, it's just trying to figure out what you don't yet know based on information available and just trying to figure it out. That's just called exploring. That's not like forming a group that has a uniform model that is all being reified after the discovery that the official model of the globe Earth is fake.
But you're off that mainstream path, aren't you? That's the important thing. You've got yourself off the globe travelator, haven't you? Which wherever you're veering, you're going to look at this journey and maybe start to evaluate it. And if the first thing you fall into is that hollow, then so be it. But it's got you off the mainstream, hasn't it? And then you're free to have a much better look around at every other option with probably much less tinted eyes.
Yeah, but that's different, though. That's different from people that literally form a uniform model and then start defending it to no end, like holding on to it like a religion. I'm sorry, but you're off worse then, because you discovered the truth and then you replaced it with something just as bad. There's no more waking up to get to that point because they already woke up. It's much harder to wake them up after they replaced it with something just as bad. Right?
So what about
the part is about staying awake. It's not about waking up. It's staying awake.
What about our flat earthers on the other side of the pond that are into dielectrics and all of this? And
no, that is what we're talking about. It was just unspoken till that moment.
Hold
Adam,
on,
thank you.
Owen's right.
Hold on. Hold on, just one sec. So I actually entirely agree with Arwen. The only problem with the sentiment, again, I know this with hindsight because I know Arwen really well, is that not only maybe Arwen didn't nibble at the feast of the nonsense. Let's just take it that way. He didn't taste any of it, right? What he did do is he looked at it and went, I could cater this. Didn't you, Arwen?
Yeah, I did. And I still do.
Come on, that guy thought he was
buying. It's just a storytelling ability that I'm developing now. And I get how it works.
Well, I think that I think that it's because we're not addressing that the problem is people's ability to think well and what it takes to actually help them think well, if that's even possible, because I don't know if that's actually addressed, since the world we live in focuses on tearing down people's cognitive skills. So what I'm saying, the truck is going by, hold on. So I'm saying if they're falling into the same problem, just different rhetoric, it's because they haven't understood the problem in their logical thinking. So what we need to fix is that, not really undo the rhetoric. People have to undo the rhetoric for themselves because they think correctly.
Agree. So, Owen, I was agreeing with you on that point. Yes, there are a group that would fit in the same category. But in doing so, then, doesn't mean flat Earth's correct. Yeah, but they're on the path. They're off the mainstream path. They're into something else that we disagree with. Yeah, but they're off that path, and so that path's virtually as valid as a hollow earthers or something. That was the.
And that's probably the toughest thing to do, is to first get off that main path, the one that's been indoctrinated into you since you were 5 or 4 or whatever. Right?
I don't know.
I wouldn't agree with Arwen saying that you're worse off because you don't know if that's just the next stop on the journey.
No, but I'm not saying in general. Like, as soon as you think like, oh, maybe it's concave, right? I thought that shortly. I just never really made any. I was just looking out like, oh yeah, that might be an option. I'll look out for the information, whether that fits. And I quickly came to the conclusion, no, it doesn't fit. It's flat, right? Well, that's different from becoming a concaver with your buddies hanging around, reifying how it's concave all day long and rolling that out like a religion to other people, right? That's different. That's different from us entertaining the possibility. Like, is it concave? That's different. And then they're stuck in that.
All I ever think about when it comes to concave was Snack to the Future 2015, 16, taking the mickey out of Lord Stephen Christ with Dick Earth jokes and Dick Earth puns. And any time that a concaver would speak on a show or be in the chat, you just see, I don't know, one of about 10 people would just seem to appear and start talking in the most serious tone they could about how they believe the Earth was the shape of a dick.
You didn't come up with that?
That was Snack to the Future. You may or may not remember Snack.
May I get a word in edgewise?
I wasn't there, though.
Go ahead, 10th.
Only if it's a spherical edgewise.
You go to the war room, right under the Coke can meme, Scientific Method and Flat Earth 3 by Danny Falkner and Answers and Genesis. I think he's referencing Tony. Tony, are you still here?
Tony's also having a premiere on his own channel, by the way.
Wait, hold on. What happened? I got busy at work. What happened with a soda can guy, aka Mr. Pilot Vapor?
Who knows?
Oh,
I did a meme that Nathan didn't understand, and then he left.
Okay. Okay.
He's still here.
Funny.
He's still here. He's chat skanking.
Tony, are you here?
And the Flat Earth 3 by Danny Faulkner.
Yeah, if you read that, he references Tony. I believe that's our Tony.
Can't see him being referenced.
No, Tony is doing
Tony.
it.
Yeah, got it.
If you scroll down to Scientific Method in bold, but flat earthers are not most people. I have previously discussed how flat earthers abuse the scientific method. I now return to this topic to discuss a more basic misunderstanding of the definition of science many flat earthers have. Here is a definition of science I recently heard a flat earther named Tony use. Quote unquote, science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. I don't think many people would disagree with this definition. However, it is flat earthers' misunderstanding of this definition that causes them to go awry. Like other flat earthers, Tony quickly insisted that per this definition, any scientific study must include both observation and experiment. I think the use of the conjunction and in this definition is meant to be taken exclusively. That is, this definition means that science can involve either observation or experimentation or both. But even if and is taken only inexclusively, Tony and other flat earthers go on to insist a very restrictive meaning for the word observation. Flat earthers like to quote various sources on scientific method. Here's one example. Make an observation or observations. 2, ask questions about observations, gather information. 3, form a hypothesis, a tentative description of what's been observed, and make predictions based on the hypothesis. 4, test the hypothesis, predictions, experiment that can be reproduced. 5, analyze the data and draw conclusions, accept or reject the hypothesis or modify the hypothesis if necessary. 6, reproduce the experiment until there are no discrepancies between observations and theory. Notice that the use of observation is in the first 3 steps, but an experiment does not appear until step 4, nor is observation mentioned as having any role or testing the hypothesis, and he's got a chart. But I'll leave this for the rest of you.
Wow.
Sorry, he's moaning about Tony's definition of observation and where it fits into the scientific method. Now, he's saying that observation isn't describing hypothesis actualization, that's experiment. Well, yes, step 1, observe a phenomena. Step 2, formulate a hypothesis. That would be to assume your cause of the effect that you're studying. And then if you want to say in simplistic terms, step 3, vary it to see if it causes it, that's an experiment. But you're saying, well, experiment doesn't appear till further... Yeah, but that's the crux of what you're getting to, even in this ham-handed description that's got asked questions about the observation and gather information, which is a step that you don't necessarily have to describe because it's under the assumption that you haven't had somebody already figure out the answer to the question you're asking. So, yeah, you can keep it in there, but it doesn't alter the fact that what you're doing is trying to find out the cause of an effect. A hypothesis includes both your observation of a phenomena and your presumed cause of it. Well, that is a hypothesis, and the actualization is an experiment. So not mentioning it in this list doesn't mean that the word "and" doesn't absolutely mean that you need to both observe something happening and then figure out why it's happening. Because that's what science does. But he wants to criticise the use of the word observation by Anthony when he literally wants to redefine the word "and." What an outrage!
He went the same route as Rumpus. Didn't Rumpus have a debate with Anthony about the definition of the word "and"?
You're thinking of Clinton.
Like observation and experiment?
Yes, it can also mean or. And
Depends
also means or, don't you know?
Depends on what your definition of "and" is. No, that's not right.
So that was what he was claiming. And also means or.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
And also means or.
Well, he says what makes astronomy a science. You're just scrolling through it right now.
And means it's over. And with that,
don't jinx it.
Yeah, Neil, you mush.
Look at this title.
That's a nice sentence, 10th. Do you want to read it?
Bathroom.
Flat Earthers' limitations on science.
Sorry, 10th. Adam, weren't we discussing this literally today on the live show?
Yeah, I'm going to scroll back to this, but I just thought I'm going to go back to the astronomy bit, but I just thought 10th might want that sentence.
Yeah, focus on the English and grammar rather than the point being made. I just beggars belief. Just coincidence that we were literally talking about this earlier. Sorry, 10th. Go ahead.
No, it's not coincidence because we were talking about it earlier. I decided to look up and see what he has to say on things, and I found this on his blog. So have at it, Adam.
I'll read it a little bit. It's just silly. With their insistence that science is done only by experiment, flat earthers have a very restrictive view of what is and what is not science. Flat earthers have picked up definitions of science that say that science is about establishing cause and effect relationships via testing hypotheses. Kind of crazy fools that do well random. So they reason that unless a hypothesis being tested to cause an effect for a cause and effect relationship, it isn't science. I'll leave that there.
Wow.
Well, that's absolutely the case. Unless you validate what caused an effect, aka actualize a hypothesis, that would be an experiment, then you haven't performed science. If you've looked at something happening, like a boiling hot spring, and you go, there's my step 1. I've observed something. I'm going to ask a question. And the question's going to be, why is that happening? So then you go, I'm going to assume a cause. I formulate a hypothesis. So far, we're in line with all the steps that he's laid out. That somehow he's going to argue doesn't require the experiment stage to establish the cause of the effect, to call it science? Oh, of course. That's because his astronomy doesn't have that. He just looks at something and calls it a black hole and describes what a black hole is. Now, does he...
You want this one? This is classic. What makes astronomy a science? Remember the scientific method. Wow, I mean, this projection's shocking. That is so popular today that has a relatively recent origin, post-stating the development of many sciences such as astronomy and physics. If the scientific method did not yet exist, how did these sciences get started? As Bacon argued, inference plays a key role in science. Such inferences are important in astronomy. For instance, how do we know the cause of lunar phases? There is no experiment with manipulation of an independent variable that one can conduct to explore this question. Therefore, using the experiment-only approach to science advocated by flat earthers, there is no way that one can determine any cause of lunar phases. Consequently, flat earthers have no idea what causes lunar eclipses. Furthermore, I have found that flat earthers have no curiosity about the moon's phases about how the moon's phases occur. However, if one takes that much broader, more proper approach to science of drawing inferences, as Bacon promoted, lunar phases are not an unsearchable mystery.
I love how it goes straight to some nonsense like lunar phases.
It's an okie doke. Again, chocolate. He's gone to Bacon, who's arguing stuff, yeah, with the old. See, look what he says. Look, is a relatively recent origin, the scientific method. Well, that's what the general public give a surety to, that recent scientific method. They don't give it to old school alchemists and occultists like Bacon in their early findings, which will have had some merit, but wasn't really the scientific method as we would use today. So he's trying to imply that just because, I think, certainly from a European point of view, that is traced back to Bacon and his questioning of things. But it's got nothing to do with the scientific method and what, like I say, the general public give validity to when they hear that word. And he's trying to okey doke it with old school stuff to the point that he can now try and claim that science doesn't have to manipulate a cause, otherwise we can't deal with lunar phases.
But this is pointless what he wrote down here, because that's like claiming, medical science, before it was medical science, we did bloodletting, and that worked for the time being. Oh yeah, did it? Did it really work so well? No, not actually. So it's like poo-pooing the scientific method. It was quite a revolution when it happened. So ridiculous.
Adam, if you keep reading, if you keep scrolling, when it goes on, let's take a look at the inferences he's making.
I'll just read the first sentence. That's enough, isn't it? If one watches the moon on a regular basis, it is obvious that the moon takes about a month to orbit around the Earth.
Taking the question.
Or chewing gum.
Hey guys. It's just going on to describe observation then, or within that assumption of orbits. So, no science there. Sounds a bit like religion.
Oh, just like that article, right?
Yeah, be careful not to write any bad criticisms about it. You might be arrested for bigotry someday.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that what he's doing? I mean, it's not like we came up with scientific method. It's almost like he's trying to say, look at these flat earthers actually adhering to the scientific method. Look how wrong they are by doing that. Like,
yeah, he's poo-pooing it. He's saying, it's only a recent thing. Why would we need the scientific method? It's not like it changed the entire world and how everything operates and made the Industrial Revolution possible or anything, because everything became so effective and efficient and not based on bullshit anymore. Yeah, I mean, who needs the scientific method? We want to go back to fantasy land where things are so much more easy.
Well, since he brought it up, this is a perfect pun. He's quoting Francis Bacon, so he might as well bacon the question.
It doesn't sound very kosher.
Listen to this. But many discussions of the scientific method do not include any mention of observation. For instance, this flowchart from another source, flat earthers tend to ignore. So I just want to look at it. Ask a question. What are you going to be asking the question on? I mean, you had when your eyes were shut.
What's for dinner?
Yeah, so they've summarised the observation like that. Ask a question, which is a bit more childish in a way, isn't it? It's just to engage. But fundamentally, though, look at it. Do the background research, construct a hypothesis, test with an experiment, right? And then this is just feedback loops, isn't it? Whether or not. But the important bit is still here. Construct a hypothesis, then test an experiment. Not do an experiment and then think of a hypothesis afterwards or other nonsense we're given. It's still valid in terms of scientific method. It's got a bit ambiguous wording here, but I don't think it's ambiguous to anyone that's going to get to this stage.
His flow chart looks kind of gay to me.
Hey, be careful with that. Ask a question. One time my daughter said to me, "Dad, how long is time?"
Sounded like his biggest issue with the way flat earthers experiment is that at some point they stop observing. So you have to perform the experiment while never looking away from it. Seemed to be his biggest gripe.
Right. Well, they want to just go to simulation where you just test based on a certain set of presumptions in your mind. So they want to probably migrate the actual empirical experiment towards the conceptual, right? That's what they want. I know they do. As Baldwin, I wanted to.
Hey, Adam, he goes down and discusses Coriolis as well as I'm scrolling. It's under...
Who is this guy anyway, Tent?
Flat Earthers' Limitations on Science. If you scroll down a few paragraphs, and then he references, so John's friend Anthony Riley. Okay, yeah, so here we go. This is one QE posted before. Perhaps the most influential flat earther in this deconstruction of science is John Stunja, who goes by the moniker Quantum Eraser, or QE for short, on the internet, though John's friend Anthony Riley, aka Sleeping Warrior, may have originally assisted John in this. John loves to pick definitions and quotes from what most people would consider authoritative sources to make his points. Of course, he's very selective in which quotes he uses. For instance, John would never use a quote about how science works from the University of California. Well, if he's referencing ask a question, well, when am I supposed to ask a question if I haven't observed anything?
Yeah, I think John likes to stick to reputable sources and not like the new type of sciences like gender.
California? California?
Yeah.
But isn't even just making that statement, isn't he saying that his own mainstream narrative has a problem with itself? Because why would QE use mainstream narrative against somebody like him?
No, he's projecting again. So he's accusing John of cherry picking while cherry picking.
Yep. He's a cherry picker.
Or consider what flat earthers have to say about the Coriolis effect, something that I've previously discussed in the context of flat earthers. In that blog, I placed blame on flat earthers for bungling the Coriolis effect on a panel of flat earthers. John, a member of this panel, was the source of the major blunders. I frequently hear flat earthers talk about an airplane taking off and consequently leaving one reference frame and entering another reference frame. That demonstrates a failure of flat earthers to understand reference frames and Coriolis effect.
What?
Hold back, Arvin, please.
I'm getting pissed.
Please. Objects don't enter and leave reference frames. Rather, the motion of an object can be simultaneously described in any number of reference frames. That is what reference frames are used for. Consequently, it is impossible for objects to enter and leave reference frames with such fundamental misunderstanding. It is no wonder why flat earthers have a clue about what the Coriolis effect is.
Does he go on to tell
Does he
us?
have a link to the Coriolis effect so you can actually look up what it is and proving that he's completely wrong?
Well, he's wrong on that score too. So while he's fundamentally not actually attacking the Coriolis claim that we refute by saying Earth's supposed to be turning underneath as a second reference frame, that's drift at 15 degrees an hour, 2 reference frames. That's what's claimed. That would shorten flight times. Is he addressing that? No. He's saying we don't understand reference frames. Things can't leave reference frames. Oh, really? So we have a rotating roundabout, and we're going to call that a non-inertial turning reference frame because we're going to be on it, observing things look like they're moving when it's actually us moving on the roundabout. So we are on a non-inertial turning reference frame. Now, if we are holding a ball, that ball rotating with us is also on a non-inertial turning reference frame. If I throw the ball off the roundabout, it leaves the non-inertial turning reference frame and enters the inertial reference frame. That is very specifically an item leaving one reference frame, the reference frame you are viewing the ball from, and it, you, and the ball are all non-inertial. You all look like you're not doing anything. The floorboards, if you look down on the roundabout, they're not moving. You're not moving. You're completely static and stationary. And the ball you're holding, also non-inertial, not moving from your vantage point in your hand. Now, admittedly, from the inertial reference frame, someone watching you holding the ball, they see it moving round and round in a circle, because they're in a different reference frame. But from your vantage point on the non-inertial reference frame, the ball isn't moving. It's non-inertial. It's stationary as you and the floorboard you're moving on. Therefore, when you remove it from that reference frame by throwing it, it leaves the non-inertial turning reference frame and enters the inertial reference frame. Now, I have used that example very specifically because that's how it's described by National Geographic when they describe the Coriolis effect. So, clown show, why is it that you're contradicting the very essence of the demonstration of the Coriolis effect given by National Geographic? Because that is precisely what they literally demonstrate when they show a ball being tossed from one person to the next. It moves in a straight line when it leaves the rotating body, but is observed to curve from the rotating body, and that's the deflection, not actual, known as Coriolis, exampled by National Geographic. However, all of that might be fascinating to some who are interested in Coriolis effect. The causes of that effect, i.e. the ball seeming to curve, are the roundabout turning beneath the ball. And if Earth, as it is claimed to have, Coriolis, has the consequences of Earth turning beneath the ball also, and the aeroplane, that would shorten the flight time, because when the plane leaves the non-inertial turning reference frame claimed to be a turning Earth and enters the inertial reference frame, it is claimed by Globe Earth that we will see the plane seem to drift because we turn beneath it. Also claimed that we will see footballs drift because we turn beneath them, and snipers have to account for it because Earth turns underneath bullets. However, this would shorten flight times because a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles would only take an hour and a half instead of 4.5 hours if Earth was turning beneath it for us to see it seem to curve. It doesn't. Earth isn't turning beneath anything. It's not that we don't understand Coriolis or items leaving reference frames, easily exampled by National Geographic, Danny. It's that Earth doesn't have this effect. We don't see Earth turning beneath anything from a non-inertial turning reference frame assumed to be a ball Earth spinning in a sky vacuum that you embarrassingly couldn't answer a question for, Danny. I digress. Earth isn't turning beneath anything. There is no Coriolis effect. I, personally, absolutely understand this deflection that's not actual, observed as you turn beneath things, in an inertial reference frame, moving in a straight path as you watch them seem to curve. That's as concise as you can get from a flat earther of what Coriolis is, and it sits in line with National Geographic. Unlike Danny Falkner's idiotic descriptions that items can't leave reference frames. Yeah, they can. They do, and it's claimed to be a case on a globe Earth that spins. We just debunk that by pointing out it doesn't happen.
So a PhD, is his argument is at the same level of the anti-flat earth retards that come here and tell us the same shit, that things don't leave reference frames, when that's literally their claim. That's
it's impossible for objects to enter and leave reference frames, right? If that's the case, then we don't need to worry about Coriolis.
Right? Just give it up.
So once again, you see, this is funny, Nathan, isn't it? Because we've gone back to this is whiffle waffle to get them back to net zero. Listen to them. There is Coriolis. No, there isn't, because it's impossible for objects to enter and leave reference frames.
You know, years ago, Zanuck said something like, "Oh, if you're on the merry-go-round and you throw the ball, the ball's still in your reference frame because you're still looking at it."
Yeah, that's technically true if you're describing Coriolis, because the drift that you see is observed as you watch it. So from that position, it's true. Where I contested what he said, it was similar or in line with what Danny Falkner's saying, which is that you can't enter or leave a reference frame. And I said, I'm Miley Cyrus on a pendulum. Believe me, if I jump off it, I'm not swinging in a back and forth motion anymore.
Yeah, but he's saying it's in your reference frame, right? So it's now you're seeing the deviation because the ball is not attached to you anymore. You threw it, and as you threw it, you're spinning around. But he's saying it hasn't left your reference frame, your non-inertial one, because you're still looking at it.
That's
even though when you're looking at it, it's in the inertial reference frame.
But that's correct. Yeah, that is actually strictly true. Because to describe the curve of the ball, it has to be described from your vantage point observing it. So he's right. From your vantage point, it stays being observed from the non-inertial reference frame. And the description you're going to give is of it curving. Now, from a different reference frame that you aren't observing, it isn't actually curving. But what the effect is actually describing is your observation from the turning platform, which is considered by you non-inertial, i.e. from your position, nothing's moving. So when you're holding the ball, if you just crunch down into a little ball and put your hands over the sides of your eyes, and you just look down at you, the floorboards, and the ball. Now, forget any feelings you've got. As far as you're concerned, in this description of Coriolis, you and the reference frame that's turning and the ball are all non-inertial, not moving, stationary. Now, the reason it's described that way is because the curve of the ball you're going to be describing is an apparent effect, meaning you do actually see it happening. You do actually see the ball take a curve. That's not an inaccurate statement. Does the ball actually take a curve? No. Do you actually see it take a curve? Yes. So describe in factual terms you actually seeing it take a curve. You have to describe that from a standpoint that you're not moving to describe the effect of the curve. So therefore, you start the description of Coriolis only observable from your eyes as you are, quote unquote, non-inertial, turning but not appearing to turn because you are considered to be the same as the reference frame. Hope that all makes sense.
I've got the okie doke.
Sure, but would you actually witness this deviation if the ball didn't leave the non-inertial reference frame?
No, then it's not doing anything. It's like you holding the ball on your lap.
Exactly. That's my point.
So, Chocolate, you see on screen, they're just this two sentences. This I think is the okie doke. Objects don't enter and leave reference frames. Well, we've just described that. If you're looking at it, yeah, and you throw it while you're spinning, it leaves it, and that's the effect we're observing, right? I'm not sure, but see, then this sentence, rather, the motion of an object can be simultaneously described in any number of reference frames. Well, see, that's true. You can mathematically describe what's happening to the ball just from the inertial or the non-inertial. There'll be different ways of descriptions, yeah? You could do that mathematically, but when we are talking about Coriolis effect, what we observe, and we're going into different reference frames. That's the purpose of it. Does that mean in maths you can't describe the root in just one of those frames? No.
I see
the origin of the Coriolis. So, I mean, you have the sun, right? And then you have the stars. Why do they need this Coriolis? Like, where do they point it out in nature other than throwing balls, but for the globes?
In the sun and the stars. In the sun and the stars.
Right,
so
and
that is Coriolis effect. I'm trying to answer you. I'm trying to answer you. in the sun and the moon and the stars, those are all described. Well, the moon's a bit of an exception in some ways, but as a general rule of thumb, the movement of Earth, i.e. the rotation at 15 degrees an hour, is claimed to be the cause of that Coriolis deflection in the stars.
Thank you.
No worries.
So you would think if you left the non-inertial reference frame, the thing that would happen would be those things that are moving up there, because you're on the non-inertial reference frame, would stop moving. They don't do that ever.
Right, there is no 15 degrees an hour drift. Drift means we're moving and the stars aren't. And if that's the case, then they back that up with gyroscopes, pendulums, bullets, and balls, saying, yeah, Earth is turning underneath the stars at 15 degrees an hour. That's Coriolis drift. And Earth's turning underneath gyros. Look, you can measure the 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath the gyro compass. Okay. What about the pendulum? Yeah, it swings around because Earth's turning beneath it. The 15 degrees an hour drift causes it to knock over these dominoes because Earth's turning underneath it. I mean, obviously pendulums don't do anything other than go back and forth, but for the fact that Earth's turning beneath them, so it looks like it's swinging in this weird pattern. It's not. It's you turning beneath it. So they've got Earth turning beneath you when you're not attached to it. Bullets, balls, pendulums, gyroscopes, stars, all claim to be moving because you turn beneath them. Okay? Well, then we're turning underneath aeroplanes. That would shorten flight times. That doesn't happen. We're not. Earth's not turning underneath anything. The stars just move. Nothing else exhibits this effect. And you can't ascribe that effect to it being Earth moving because there'd be other natural consequences of that, and there aren't.
As evidenced by a drone with a camera, obviously, hovering, and the stars continue to move.
And it not whizzing away from you at the rate that the Earth is claimed to be turning beneath it at that particular latitude. So if you're on the equator, not only should you be able to launch a drone and have the stars stop moving, you should watch the drone whiz away from your position at 1,000 miles an hour. Not actually fly away from you at 1,000 miles an hour. No drone can fly at 1,000 miles an hour. But it's claimed you'll spin away from the drone at 1,000 miles an hour, giving the apparent impression that the drone's flying away from you at 1,000 miles an hour. It's not. It's just claimed that Earth turns underneath drones and footballs and bullets and pendulums and gyroscopes and the stars. But obviously, if that was the case, you jump up and down on the equator and Earth would turn beneath you 1,000 miles an hour. Doesn't happen.
Well, that's what happens when you take a stationary Earth with the stars moving, then make a lie about it and say it's a ball and it's curved and it's turning. That's why we see the stars moving. And then when held to task, once you leave this ball Earth, all your argument falls apart. So you want drift, but then you cancel drift at the same time.
Well, Dewey summarises this argument beautifully. He did it on his last show. He's not interested in the Coriolis effect. I'm not even interested in the Coriolis effect. What we're interested in is the claimed causes of Earth-based Coriolis effect. The claimed and necessitated cause of Earth-based Coriolis effect is Earth turning beneath stuff that isn't attached. That's what it is. So the cause of us seeing things drift as a result of Earth turning underneath necessitates Earth turning underneath stuff that isn't attached. And we'd notice. These examples with bullets and gyros and balls are a way of getting you away from the obvious and observable fact that nothing happens. Nothing's drifting. So they conjure it in a piece of apparatus like a gyro or a pendulum. Or they say it happens with a bullet, which you can't see with your naked eye, that's only in the air for a fraction of a second. Or they say it happens with a football, again, only in the air for a couple of seconds. Earth turns underneath this football, Earth's rotation assisted this field goal. So Earth turned underneath the ball then when it left the Earth that's turning? Yeah, what about the blimp film in the game? That would have Earth turning constantly underneath it at whatever rate it's claimed to be at that particular latitude. No, definitely not the case. Earth isn't turning under your football, Mr. deGrasse Tyson. It just curved, actually curved. It wasn't looking like it curved because we turned beneath it. Footballs just curve sometimes.
Right. So as a consequence, you could also, if they were incorrect, I mean, they are incorrect, but if they say, oh, look, we can't measure the 15, it just turned to 7. They just have to move, 7 degrees, and we messed up. They just have to move the sun a little further away, and then they're right again. They can just keep moving the sun and claiming that they're correct.
No, the natural consequences are always in place with Coriolis drift. There's always going to be something to observe drifting away from you at whatever rate is claimed to be the rate of rotation, the rim velocity of a turning Earth. So it's always going to be an effect that you notice. It's not something that you can get around by moving the distance to the sun. Doesn't make any difference. They're claiming you're turning to see sunsets. That's Coriolis effect. They're claiming balls get deflected through goals because Earth turns beneath them. That's Coriolis effect. They're claiming snipers have to track their target because Earth's going to turn underneath the bullet. That's Coriolis effect. That's what Globe claims. It just means Earth's turning underneath stuff, and it definitely ain't happening.
Nathan, in the War Room, I posted where he said go to this article about Coriolis in the previous blog. I listed it. It's called The Coriolis Effect, the Foucault Pendulum, the Flat Earth Movement. And then it shows, and I got a picture of a roundabout. And he actually uses the roundabout. Yeah, maybe Adam could click and share that. That's pretty hilarious.
I've got it up on screen now for the audience. Nevertheless, I'll once again take up the subject in an attempt to straighten out flat earthers' thinking about Coriolis effect. Oh, yeah.
Which would be the same thinking as your mainstream narrative, which apparently you disagree with because you can't prove. That's cute.
Yeah, a couple of people that really you should be addressing, and it ain't me. Because I don't claim Coriolis effect. He seems to be attacking this straw man like we make claims about Coriolis effect, missing the point that Globe makes claims about Coriolis, not us. So 2 issues that you maybe need to address in light of your complete contradiction of the National Geographic example that we definitely sit in line with and would cause shortened flight times if it occurred on a turning Earth. You think that items aren't leaving reference frames, despite that being the example National Geographic make. Okay, but there's numerous ones that you can describe it from. Really? Well, then it seems that the person you need to address is Simon Dan, who very specifically makes it clear that reference frames have been ruined. He thought they were mine too. He's an idiot. I don't have any reference frames to claim. Again, the Globe claims 2 of them. Non-inertial turning Earth and inertial reference frame to see drift from the non-inertial turning Earth. Drift that we don't observe in aeroplanes, because if we did it would shorten their flight times. But Dan says you and your reference frames are ruined. So while you, Danny Falkner, are describing how you've got all these different reference frames that can be used mathematically to describe things, Simon Dan says they're ruined. Now, they'd only be ruined for a globe because that's the only thing making a claim of reference frames.
Well, he goes into some math formula and the poles and gives a whole different, well, you just have to scroll down.
Notice that this equation agrees with the observation that the linear velocity is 0 at the centre, where r equals O. What r?
R.
Would that be the r that we debunked with the black swan? You see, when you say r equals 0, are you talking about the r in a sphere Earth that's making this claim? Because it sounds like you're attacking our understanding of Coriolis effect when in reality the only person making this claim is a globe. It's part of the heliocentric understanding that there's 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns beneath stuff. Coriolis effect is definitely a globe claim, definitely drift, definitely claim that Earth's turning beneath stuff. Neil deGrasse Tyson makes that example with a football. Assisted by Earth's rotation, that's Earth turning beneath footballs. So we understand what the globe claims, it's just that would cause shortened flight times, Danny. and where you're getting R from.
I mean, Danny, the citation that I read all the time is from thoughtco.com that calls it illusion. That's been provided to me by Globers, right? The same people on your side. So, again, an illusion. It's not actually happening.
Isn't it labeled not actual deflection?
Yeah, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a picture of a sphere in this diagram. Right, it's talking of radius of a merry-go-round, but then he's got what looks like the radius of a sphere. But the radius of a sphere Earth presupposition comes from elevation angle measurements to Polaris for dual radii, or derivation of dip angle by Al-Biruni after he measured a flat plane to get the height of the mountain. So the R that you can assert for the claimed radial value of Earth when describing its spin has been debunked, Danny.
Oh, Danny boy.
Anything else we need to rip apart?
Yeah.
It's obvious he's not keeping up with the flat
Hold on.
Earth debate,
Here we go.
that's for sure.
Effect on weather and climate? Oh dear, Danny. Oh, this is where you and the pilot and Wolfie 6020 get to taste the same disdain. Now, not actual deflections observed from rotating bodies aren't going to have any effect on weather. You see, the Coriolis effect is a not actual deflection, Danny. So the fact that you've got a heading or subheading that says effect on weather, what kind of an idiot assumes that a not actual drift will have effects on weather? Danny, you're clearly misunderstanding what Coriolis drift is if you think it's going to have an effect on weather. Unless, of course, you're describing you and Toto rotating around in a whirlwind, observing trees seem to come towards you and then seem to move away. That would be the Coriolis effect you'd observe if you were rotating in a cyclone. But other than that, there is no effect on weather. It's only observed from a rotating body. Let's have a little look at what Danny's got to say about how the effect on weather and climate is going to be described by him. It isn't. You're an idiot, Danny. Even says it. What Coriolis effect directly affects the prevailing winds? They don't. Coriolis effect is a not actual deflection, Danny. It can't have any effect on prevailing winds. It's an illusion observed from a turning body. So are you so stupid that you think that not actual deflection is going to have an effect on wind? Yeah, Danny, you're going to need to get your ass on here and square this circle for me, because I'm calling you out right now as a complete idiot who does not understand Coriolis effect in spite of you publishing crap on it. Because you think not actual drift affects winds. I'm going to publicly state right now, Danny Falkner is an imbecile. And I, the flat earther, am going to humiliate him right now by pointing out that not actual effects cannot take any effect on wind. Oh, I want a response from Danny Falkner on this. I'm going to publish it with his name and send it to him. Danny, you're publishing articles that are moronic. Not actual deflection cannot affect winds. Anybody else want to just reiterate what I'm saying? I've said it 3 different ways.
Yeah. Observed effects that are visual effects only. I'm feeding back on someone else. Observed effects which are visual effects only cannot affect the weather systems of the Earth.
I mean, use the word they use, illusion. How does an illusion affect the weather, Danny?
He says the Coriolis effect deflects the inrushing air towards the west. Danny, do I really have to educate you? Aren't you a learned man? Do you not realise that Coriolis effect is a not actual deflection? But you think not actual deflection only observable from rotating bodies of things seeming to curve when they actually move straight affects inrushing air You think it deflects it, do you? You think the deflection that's not actual, observable only from a rotating body, actually deflects wind? Oh, Danny, you are so stupid. Now, we are going to demand a retraction for this stupid idiocy. Not actual deflections cannot affect wind, and I will be demanding a retraction for this. A correction for your stupidity, Danny. Why are you polluting the general public with the notion that not actual deflection affects winds? You're a fundamental retard, Danny. Yeah, you're going to be correcting this crap and putting out a retraction and a statement about how wrong you were to say not actual drift affects wind. Oh, Danny, I'm going to be demanding this. Yeah, you will be correcting this error. Okay, Danny? You're talking about us in this article, not me, I mention. I don't get a mention. Outrageous, really. Yeah, but I better be getting one. With a correction about not actual deflection, that's curves that don't really curve, things that travel straight and seem to take a curved path. That's Coriolis deflection, Danny. You think that does something to wind? No, Danny. No, you're fundamentally retarded, Danny. No, you need to correct this shit that you're spouting, Danny. Quick, sharp. At the demand of me, the flat earther, who's pointing out how wrong you are. No, Danny, not actual deflection won't affect wind. You moron. Yeah, you better get this corrected, Danny. Quick, sharp.
Could I just point?
Maybe he's of the same stance as Kosho, who thinks that hurricane winds 100% move in a straight line. They just appear to curve because of the Coriolis effect.
Well, if that was the case, which is moronic, then Kosho would be describing not actual deflection that Coriolis is. Coriolis effect would be you observing a wind seem to move in a curved path because you're on a rotating Earth underneath a wind that's actually moving straight. So the wind in Kosho's example is moving straight, and he sees it take an apparent path because he claims that winds move straight and that he turns beneath them. Of course, that would be a not actual curve of the wind. Danny, who's fundamentally retarded and pumping out this nonsense, seems to think this not actual curved path of the wind described by Kosho is actually affecting the wind. Oh my God, Danny. I mean, do we really have to educate you on what Coriolis effect is? It's not actual drift and definitely isn't affecting winds. My God, you're stupid, Danny. Oh, me, a flat earther, correcting your stupid nonsense really stings. Because you're stupid, Danny. And I, the flat earther, take great pleasure in pointing out how stupid you are when you state quite boldly that the wind's being affected by not actual illusions. Oh, my God. Can we rub this in a bit more, please? Rub in how stupid Danny is.
Yeah. Could I point out what I would consider the worst statement from someone in his position that I heard today? He is claimed to be a scientist, a PhD, right? He's claimed to be world-renowned, I suppose, at this stage, right? He talked about making predictions after hypothesis time. For anyone listening out there, a scientific prediction is the hypothesis. It's the independent and dependent variable. The dependent variable is the naturally observed effect. The independent variable is what you presume is causing the natural cause of this naturally observed effect. That is the hypothesis. So anyone like Danny, especially Danny Falkner in this instance, who's talking about making predictions after that point, means he hasn't got a clue about what he's talking about, and he's filling you, the general public, up with a heap of crap.
Spot on. Exactly. A hypothesis is a scientific prediction. With that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a member, hitting the thanks button and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!